rather giving the Conservatives and Labour a bit of a beating, so we'll be finding out about those. We'll be looking into maths and teaching, and whether teachers should be teaching from home. We'll be speaking to the great maths teacher, Bobby Seagull. I know, they've been saying teachers should be able to work from home too.
But then,
I know.
Where would the pupils be?
I know. And I'll be joined by everybody's favourite lefty, Andy Williams, and we'll be going through some other stories and giving them a good beating. So, there we are.
Thank you. That's James Max. He's coming up next. That is it from me. I'm back same time tomorrow, 1 o'clock. It's Talk.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. Shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, or far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No. There's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
And a very good afternoon to you. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 4 o'clock. It's me, James Max, with you until 7 o'clock here on Talk with your Drive Time show. All sorts of things to discuss with you. We'll be turning our attention, yes, to those catastrophic economic results. We'll also be turning our attention to the big political stories of the day. And we'll be sorting out some of your travel problems and indeed maybe getting some advice on what you can be putting on that Christmas table in a couple of days' time. Yes, it is Monday the 23rd of December, and this is Drive, and I want to talk to you about the economy because the budget and our plan for change, said the Chancellor, will deliver sustainable long-term growth, putting more money in people's pockets, she said, through increased investment and relentless reforms. Yeah, that's what she said. The problem is that the growth isn't there, interest rates are remaining high, inflation is going in the wrong direction, job vacancies are going in the wrong direction, and everything's going to hell in a handcart. Why is the UK economy struggling? Give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. I'm James Max. This is Talk. So a very good afternoon to you. 4 minutes past 4 o'clock, this 23rd of December. And I'd like to be bringing some Christmas cheer. I'd love to be talking to you about how, well, you know, we're just kind of sort of like just winding down for Christmas. And there's, you know, plenty going on and it's all sort of good cheer and all that sort of business. But the problem is, it isn't. The state of Britain's stalling economy is, quote, disappointing. According to a Labour cabinet minister, as a leading business group, that's the CBI, they said the country's fiscal outlook was headed for the worst of all worlds next year. And the reason that I want to talk to you about this is because this isn't just some political story about who should or who shouldn't be in charge and how things are done. This is about talking about your economy, your job, your career, your pension, your life. Because if money is being taken out of your pocket, and if the government is taking the wrong decisions, and if they're taking decisions that affect and impact you in either a good or a bad way, then we should be talking about it. And particularly when we see these numbers, that the economy between July and September didn't grow at all. They revised the numbers down slightly. Now, the difference between 0.1% plus and 0% is but minuscule. But it's about sentiment. And arguably, when we get those numbers for October to December, they'll be worse. So I do want to hear from you as to why the UK economy is struggling. Is it poor leadership? Would you say it's the wrong economic decisions? Is it about tax? Is it about the decisions that have been taken previously? Do you want to play the blame game and say, well, it's after 15 years of Tory governance and they made the mistakes and now Labour's got to pick up the mess and it's going to take time and all that sort of business? Or do you agree with me that in addition to the problems that we had from the previous government, we now have problems from the current government? They no longer can blame the previous government and say, well, you left us a financial mess. Because, to be honest, the decisions that they've taken since they took power have largely been wrong. They've put up tax when they should be chopping it and keeping it down. They've put money into things that maybe they shouldn't be putting money in. They've made ideological decisions that are frightening people with money and investment proposition away. So I don't think this is a problem relating to the previous government and their appalling governance. I think this is largely because of the decisions made by Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and all of them who have said one thing and done another. The budget and our plan for change will deliver sustainable long-term growth. Balderdash. Putting more money into people's pockets. Unlikely. Through increased investment, i.e. borrowing, and relentless reform, i.e. getting in the way and interfering, we are being governed by people who do not understand what they are saying and what they are doing. Their policies are poor. Their execution is dreadful. So, that's my view. What's yours? Why is the UK economy struggling? You tell me. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. And also, by the way, if you want to talk about your situation, how perhaps you are struggling, the differences that you have noticed in the last 5 or 6 months to you, to your pay packet, to your pension, to the money that you have available in your pocket, or the decisions that you're taking now because you are afraid or concerned about what's to come. Do give me a call. I will open the phone lines. It's 0344 499 1000. We will come to your calls as soon as we can. Meanwhile, let's speak to Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor, joins me now. Paul, very good afternoon to you. This is a disaster, isn't it? It couldn't be a worse end to the year for Labour, could it?
Dear me, if we listen to you, we'd all be packing up and going home. I mean, how depressing. But I don't think I agree with everything you've said there. I think there's a few things I'd pick out. One on investment, for example. We just had a big investment summit a few weeks ago where £63 billion worth of investments coming in from investors into our economy. People on the national minimum wage are going to see an increase in their take-home pay, 3 million of them. I hope most people would be glad there's some money going into the national health service to get that off its knees and to get those waiting times down. We'll benefit from that. Yvette's announced more coppers on the streets, and that will help with the shoplifting epidemic and the burglaries and the muggings. And I think there are signs of hope here.
You talk about signs of hope, but let's just pick up some of the points that you've made, because you talk about investment into the country, but you speak to any investment organisation and they'll be reeling from, for example, the tax changes. They'll be reeling from how this government has dealt with non-doms and what they've done to the tax system. And also, you speak to any organisation, and it doesn't matter whether it's a hospitality company or a retailer or indeed bigger organisations. They'll all ask, why on earth is the government putting up national insurance and increasing the tax bill? And indeed, if you look at the care sector or you look at the charitable sector, huge amounts of money that the government, the public give to those organisations is going to be sapped up by those changes. So you can talk all you like about the positivity. I've never seen such an economic mess made by a group of people who seem not to understand what they're doing.
Well, hang on. Where were you when the Liz Truss budget went through then? Were you out on the moon? Because that...
I didn't think that was good at all. I criticised it at the time.
That tanked the economy and put all of our mortgage rates up. And, that was you talk about catastrophe in your monologue earlier. But, I mean, that
yes.
was...
And look what Rachel Reeves has done. She's put up inflation because of the pay rises that she's given without asking for any changes in working practices. And then what she's done is she's delayed the reduction in interest rates, which will not only cost the nation, but also people up and down this country. Her decisions, it's not the previous lot, her decisions have kept interest rates up for longer. Inflation is going in the wrong direction. Employment is going in the wrong direction. It's a disaster.
So on the interest rates, obviously the Bank of England committee this week decided to not put them up and not take them down either, but they're just the same. So that's stability. And if you talk to investors, I'll take your point about investors, they want stability. They don't want a new prime minister every few months. They want a sense that a government's going to be in office for a 4-year period now, and that there'll be some backdrop that they can make their investment decisions.
If that's the case, all right. I see your sunny uplands. Paul. But if they're doing so well, why has Labour support absolutely tanked? We now have a situation where Labour is as unpopular as Jeremy Corbyn was at his least popular moment.
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. Well, I mean, first of all, Labour goes into the end of the year ahead in the polls, so that's a good sign. But yes, down from where it was in the election.
But that's
in July.
19%.
And I think I think one of the things happens is governments are always unpopular, so it's always difficult to be ahead in the polls to quite the same extent as you are when you're in opposition. But the other is Starmer's strategy is to get all these very difficult, tough decisions out of the way, including tax rises, early. So you can make the tough decisions early in the cycle, and then we can start to enjoy some of the better things as we go along through a 4-year period. That's why, saying no to the WASPy women, for example, a really unpopular decision, in my view, the right decision to make, but do it early. Same with
so people forget. I mean, do you think people will forget the taking away of the winter fuel allowance?
No, I don't suppose they will. But I think, why do millionaires need that? It's, there are tough decisions.
But they could have made a decision. They could have said anybody who's on a higher tax rate will take it away. But they took it away from people who are on £12,500, £13,000, £14,000 a year. It makes no sense.
Well, at the same time, they said they're going to impose the triple lock on pensions, which means pensions aren't going to go up. And that was another choice that the government made. So I just think it's early days. Any reasonable person will say you can't turn an economy around in a few months. And the figures today, of course, relate to the period before the budget.
Well, that goes against the comment that you made before that, Liz Truss managed to ruin it in 45 days. But anyway, let's bring in Sunil Sharma, host of Rational Voices with Sunil. Sunil, so you've heard what Paul has to say. Let's talk a little bit about your perspective. Am I being unfair if I say that Rachel Reeves and her policies have pretty much trashed the UK economy?
For sure. I think your monologue summed it up perfectly at the start of this show. I mean, this argument, we're constantly talking about investors and people, the investment they're going to get into this country. Aside from China, more millionaires have left the United Kingdom since Keir Starmer has been in power than any other country, aside from China. So if these so-called rich people that the Labour Party are apparently attacking in terms of they're going to get more money from their taxes, well, they physically can't because they're not here. They're all leaving the United Kingdom. So that naturally means it's everyone else that will face the burden of these tax rises. So I think it's worth definitely noting the failures of the previous government, but Labour have had a fantastic opportunity to really turn this around, come up with some clear, decisive policy. We've seen none of that, and I don't see any changes that are happening right now. There doesn't seem to be a fundamental philosophy that any of these guys, the cabinet, share, and I don't really have much room for optimism. I can't see where...
Let me ask you about the optimism, because Rachel Reeves will possibly point to the policies being put forward by Angela Rayner to build our way out of recession. Do you think that the building boom that they say will deliver 300,000 homes a year, first of all, do you think they'll be able to deliver it? And secondly, do you think that will produce the economic growth that they say it will?
I don't think they'll be able to build it. I think the regulation in this country to build is pretty awful, and I think I don't think that's a feasible target. And secondly, it can have an impact, but I just think that's going to be the cause of us booming our economy. I don't think so. I think innovation, we saw it in terms of, UK has still, even it's not completely ruined yet, but life science is incredible in this country. We've got one of the best life sciences. I would rather see us focus on innovation, lowering taxes, really pushing small businesses, medium businesses in this country, supporting them to grow, rather than what we're doing right now, which I think is, if you're a small business owner, medium-sized business owner in this country, you have next to no support, and you're going to continue to get next to no support. So I think there's a real lack of understanding in terms of what makes an economy grow. And I think they're more interested in this taxing the wealthy kind of policy, and even with what they're doing with farmers, there just seems to be no actual understanding of what gets an economy growing. And I think one of the reasons, without being blunt or too rude about it, is I just don't think they actually have the knowledge or the skill set to do that. Rachel Reeves does not have a strong economic past. No one in that cabinet does. So how are they going to grow an economy when none of them have been entrepreneurs, none of them have been successful in business, none of them really have strong economic backgrounds? So where are these ideas going to come across? So that's my concern. I'd rather they be honest about it and look maybe outside and look for...
So if you were sitting on the Chancellor's shoulder and trying to give her some advice, what would you say that she needs to do, economically speaking, to get that growth that everybody says they want?
I think first thing, lowering taxes. Taxes in this country are just becoming ridiculous. I think that'd be the first thing. I think second thing, and I'm almost going to steal something from reform, I think the increase in personal allowance. Personal allowance in this country has barely gone up in the last 20 years. Considering how much inflation's gone up, considering the costs of everything else, the fact that we still have a personal allowance that is terribly low, I think that should be a very quick overnight fix, I think there. So I think lowering taxes would 100% be the first thing I think we Rachel should be doing, and the Labour Party should be doing. I think that's a good starting point. I think just generally having some more concessions for small businesses and medium businesses in this country would be another starting block. But
well, let's put that to Paul. So, Paul, let me come back to you and just ask you the simple question that most people seem to think that if you lower tax, you create the opportunity for people to invest. You put more money in people's pockets. We already had the highest tax burden in 70 years. Arguably, Rachel Reeves has put tax in the wrong direction, particularly for small business.
Well, I've been hearing this, all my political life, 30, 40 years, if the answer is just to lower taxes. But when you do that, when countries attempt this, what happens is the crime rate goes up, the public services crumble, the schools are falling down, there's cracks in the pavement, there's potholes all over the place, charities have to close. This is what happens when you don't have a tax base. And so our argument has always been, you need a thriving market economy, you need entrepreneurs and you need business, but you need the backcloth of...
But that's not going to work if you frighten them away, is it?
With public services as well, and that's what Rachel is all about. And to say she's not got a good economics background, I mean, she's got a degree in economics from Oxford and she's got a master's in economics from the London School of Economics.
She hasn't got a clue.
She knows what she's talking about.
No, she doesn't. She knows an ideology. So to me, I'll tell you why. She knows what she's talking about in terms of ideology. So if you want to put VAT on school fees, fine, because you don't like private schools. I get it. But if you think that
they're not charities. That's the point with private schools. They're businesses and they should pay their fair rate of tax, same as every other business.
Yes, except other than the fact that education has always been considered in this country as a charitable endeavour. But let's gloss over that for a second. But if you're going to make ideological choices and say that you're going to make savings through it, if you're going to make ideological choices through the tax that you're going to apply to farmers and everything else. You're just dealing with an ideological chancellor who has learnt their skill at university through reading books, through reading Keynesianism. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. She's crashing the economy far worse than Liz Truss ever did. This is appalling.
Well, I mean, with the fact we've got flatlining growth is of concern, but it is flatlining. It hasn't gone down, and we're not in recession. And, you know, the Bank of England has not put interest rates up like it did a few years ago.
Just wait for them to do so when inflation goes up. But Paul, look, we could row all afternoon. You could tell me that the sunny uplands are there, and I could probably tell you that they're not. But I must leave it there, and I thank you for engaging in the conversation. That's Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor, and also thanks to Sunil Sharma, host of Rational Voices with Sunil. So you've heard from them. Now I want to hear from you. You might think that I'm barking up the wrong tree, that maybe Rachel Reeves is the most brilliant economist and chancellor that we've ever had, and she's just fixing everything. Alternatively, you may agree with me and think that the decisions that she is taking is piling misery onto our economy and indeed our prospects. Why is the UK economy struggling is what I'm asking. The telephone number is 0344 499 1000. And I promise we will take your calls next here on Talk.
She sees the state as the primary engine of growth, and it picks winners and it decides which are the most productive sectors of the economy. It's sort of like, turning things on their head. That, the way that Liz Truss would see things, she would say, well, you roll back the state and you get the animal spirits going and you let entrepreneurs and the market take care of everything. They see things in the opposite way. What's very interesting is Liz Truss wasn't even allowed 5 minutes to see if her ideas would do any good.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
23 minutes past 4 is the time. It's me, James Max, with you until 7 o'clock with your Drive Time show this Monday afternoon, 23rd of December. I am with you till 7, as I said, and I'm going to be with you tomorrow and on Friday. I know, special treat. Anyway, I'm talking to you about, yes, those terrible economic figures, and I am asking you the very simple question, why is the UK economy struggling? 0344 499 1000. That's the telephone number. Heather is in Gavan. Heather, hello.
Hello, James. I've been working this all the way through. Do you know, with like Angela Rayner was saying that she's going to be building loads of houses. Well, I've been looking at this. With Rachel Reeves is putting up all this tax. How on earth is she going to get the supplies in and what the need for to build the houses?
Well, you see, what I don't understand is what I don't understand, Heather, is when you talk about the houses and you talk about, well, how can they do it? If there aren't the people to build the houses because they don't have the skills, or if the money isn't there because developers have to borrow it, how are they going to do it? Do you think they can even deliver it?
No, because like these companies who supply the stuff that they need to build the houses, like the bricks, the mortars and everything else, they're not going to be here because the high taxation of their companies will close their firms down. And how on earth are we going to build houses then? Are we going to go back to the bad old days?
Well, it would appear as if we're heading that way, Heather. So, to your mind, the UK economy, is it right to say it's struggling? And if it is, why?
It's through high taxation. Simple as that fact. When you put tax up far too high at a fast rate, I could see a catastrophic of the unemployment rates within about 4.5 years. They'll shoot through the roof. And it's going the wrong direction as it is. By the time we finish, there will be no industry of all industries. There's not going to be nothing left for the people to work in because they've all been moving out of the country.
So do you think that when it... Do you think that when...
Small businesses...
Heather, yes. Do you think that we will see this as a one-term Labour government? Is there a chance that they'll stay in power after this?
It's going to be a long-term government because we know for a fact that reform is galvanising.
Yeah, but Labour is still ahead in the polls. So whether they get there or not, maybe they. I don't know, maybe reform will make it. We'll see. I'm sure we'll be covering that. Heather, thank you. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number to join the conversation. Why is the UK economy struggling? Why are we seeing flatlining growth? Why are we seeing economic prospects look perhaps darker and less positive than they should be? 0344 499 1000. That's the telephone number. You can send me a text, 87222. Start your text with the word talk. And you can X me at talkTV. Yes. Just before we get to just discussing a little bit of a BBC wrangle, which we will do. Just a couple of messages which have come in. The Labour guy is delusional. The investment hasn't happened yet, so it's only predicted not delivered. The yield is higher on bonds now than under trust. Interest rates are higher for longer. PMI is sinking, so businesses are not letting contracts. And Labour haven't just crashed the economy, they've put it on life support, says Jenny. James, tell your guest 60 billion was financial jazz hands. Okay. The only growth, says Terry and Slough, is under this useless, incompetent Labour government will be poverty. And I wouldn't trust the Chancellor to run a jumble sale, never mind the finance. Adrian says, James, welcome back. Thank you, Adrian. Paul Richards ignores that also that you don't have a tax base when the rich leave the country. This one says, James, I've worked out how the shambles in number 1011 is they play Monopoly. They grabbed the houses, immigration grabbed the hotels, Robber Reeves tried to grab all the cash, but Ed got there first, Waterworks charged double for landing, Kia grabbed the chance cards, and I could go on, as I live in Old Kent Road. Thank you very much indeed for that. James, we'll just have this last one here. Says Jane, I totally agree with you regarding the state of the economy. I'm a waspy mum. I have 2 grown-up children and 7 grandchildren. What I've learned in bringing up my children and helping the grandchildren is that parents can work, is that you look after your finances, you feed the family, you keep them warm and clothed, and everything else comes second. This government doesn't even do this. They dish out money left, right and centre to unions and overseas and not look after their own people first. It's totally ideological. The idiots, says Jane. OK. 0344 499 1000. Tell me why the UK economy is struggling. Now, something else that's struggling is the BBC, because they've refused to play an anti-Starmer Christmas song that will cost pensioner donations. This is according to the singer of the Festive parody. Well, that singer, Dean Ager, singer of Freezing This Christmas, is with me now. Dean, good afternoon to you.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me on.
So, the BBC is meant to be impartial. So, is it half surprising that they decided not to play your anti-Starmer Christmas charity song?
Well, for me, I mean, I'm not politically motivated, but yes, I think it does show bias, and the BBC is meant to be impartial, and they're also meant to. Well, they're also obviously governed by the people, obviously the taxpayers, but they're not listening to them.
I suppose they're not listening to them, but then on the other hand, they have a long history of banning stuff that they don't like. I mean, they didn't like Frankie Goes to Hollywood Relax. They thought that was off, and in essence, they sent it up to number 1. Maybe we should have a little listen. For I don't know, research purposes, because we'll happily play it here on Talk. So I understand that you've been singing it outside Parliament, so let's have a little listen.
It'll be freezing this Christmas without you at home. It'll be freezing this Christmas while Keir Starmer's home.
So there we go, a little clip there of your song. So what was the reason for you wanting to put this together?
I didn't write the lyrics. I was just, my part in the campaign was the singer. But as soon as I realised what it was campaigning for, and raising money, which is the big factor for me, the driving force was trying to raise as much money for the situation with cutting the winter fuel allowance for the elderly people. And yeah, I wanted to be part of this, and I couldn't believe how much traction it's got. It's done great to get to where it is, considering the BBC are not playing it on, and obviously there's no airtime play. I did actually have an interview with the BBC. It was about a half-an-hour debate. So they may want to say, oh, well, actually, we are impartial. We did invite Dean on to put his point across. But this was on the day after the cut-off of the sales. So it made absolutely no difference to them. So it's like their idea of being impartial by not actually playing it, surely that does show some bias.
Well, listen, the BBC have made a statement and they've said, we play a wide range of music across our stations. We don't have specific policies on tracks or ban any songs. Decisions on what we play are always made with the relevant audiences and context in mind. I mean, I would have thought that if you're at number 37 in the chart, you would have thought that a little bit of playtime on the BBC might be appropriate, but they clearly don't.
As I said, they are choosing on behalf of the people. They think what they want to hear. But by clearly, with this whole media storm going ahead and millions of people listening to the song, supporting the song, and downloading it, it's obviously made it a bit of an embarrassment, really, for the government. And by squashing down the message, it just fuels it more, doesn't it? I mean, let people make up their own choices and let them listen to what they want to, and obviously listen to the people. I mean, that's the main thing. And I actually went up to Parliament Square yesterday. As I said, you saw in that video, myself singing the song with obviously a Keir Starmer mask next to me. It's a parody. It's showing, and I think the government, by not listening to the people, they're kind of making themselves look more like a Scrooge type character, which was, I guess, what I was trying to portray. And obviously being mean at this time of year, being, kind of not, the policy is very unpopular, and it's unpopular with millions. And my platform is obviously my voice to be able to sing that song and put that across to millions, which is bizarre. Absolutely. I mean, it's come out of nowhere for me, but I'm very proud to be obviously part of it.
Well, as you say, it has been raising money for Age UK, over £50,000 so far. So well done to you, Dean. Thank you for coming on and speaking to us this afternoon here on Talk. So Dean Egger is the singer of Freezing This Christmas, the song that's been pretty much banned, except the BBC doesn't ban things, of course, but not played by the BBC, but you can find it, I'm sure. It's number 37 on the official singles chart. Raising money, as they said, for Age UK, and £50,000 so far, probably very much required. Freezing This Christmas is the song you need to look for and listen to if you wish. Meanwhile, we'll turn back to your calls on why you think the economy in the UK is faltering. We'll take more of your calls on 0344 499 1000. This is Drive on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, the excitement is that whilst Jeremy is probably sunning himself somewhere, it's me, James Max, with you until 7 o'clock. So, the phone lines are open and I want to hear from you because we've heard that the economy is faltering. We've heard that Labour are defending it. Oh, it's disappointing. It's a bit of blame storm on the previous lot, all that sort of business. But I'm asking you a very straightforward question, which is why is the UK economy struggling? I mean, do you blame them or do you blame world events? I mean, you can look at the hangover, if you like, from COVID. You can have a look at the decisions that have been taken over the last few years. And, of course, there's some blame to be taken by the previous government. I'm not saying that they're all wonderful, but they seem to be putting things back together. And then Rachel, from accounts, seems to have done everything she can to ruin it. But that's just my view. What's yours? 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, families whose homes are broken into this Christmas day, they're going to face double heartbreak because new figures found the number of culprits being caught by police has fallen. The data uncovered uncovered by a Freedom of Information Act survey has revealed that those who were burgled on Christmas Day last year, police only managed to charge a suspect 1 in 10 cases of the almost 400 logged. I mean, if you have a look at the thefts that seem to be going on, not only of homes but also of shops and elsewhere, burglaries going unsolved. How on earth do we get more convictions? How on earth do we stop this crime epidemic? Well, I'm joined now by Peter Kirkham, former TCI Met Office detective, joins me now. Peter, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. This is just another stat indicating that our criminal justice system, our prevention system in terms of burglaries or thefts from retail units and indeed from people's homes appears to be broken. What's the answer to this? Is the government giving the right sense of resource and urgency?
There is no single answer. There are a number of answers, and most of those, like most things in life, cost money. Policing has been ravaged since 2010, and although Boris Johnson, with great flourish, announced that he was going to bring the numbers of cops back by recruiting 20,000 over a short period of time, he didn't say anything about the police civil staff, support staff that were cut equally and haven't been restored, or the PCSOs that were important in maintaining an actual visible presence and point of contact in town centres and high streets especially, and on estates. And they were cut, again, to the bone, and they haven't been replaced either. So we are still an awful lot of police resource down on where we were in 2010. And of course, the calls on that resource have increased since then, just with population.
Now,
so we're probably looking at a real problem.
Sure, there are some who would say that the whole idea to bring in PCSOs was the beginning of the end, in the sense that if you degrade, if you like, the role of the police officer, yes, of course, you have visibility, but we've relied more on CCTV, which seems to catch no one, prevent nothing. And then, of course, you had PCSOs on the street, but then you have so many stories where they're just plastic police. Do we need to get back to a system where we have real police on our streets, in person, as well as all the technology?
In short, yes. I've yet to see any technology that actually does what a police officer does, which is actually run towards danger and intervene in difficult situations and make arrests. No computer, no camera, no artificial intelligence. None of that is going to replace what the police officer does. Hopefully, it will free up time for that police officer so they're on the street more than they're in the office doing paperwork. It's not paper now, it's all on computer systems. But that's not really the case. And it just tends to add the technology. You know, CCTV comes in, CCTV or video recording of interviews comes in, where you've got all the storage of those in an evidentially sound way. You've got all the documentation of those. So there's massive time and expense involved in virtually all new uses of technology, and they still don't deliver you what a police officer delivers you. The PCSOs, I wouldn't say, is the thin end of the wedge. They're not police officers, so there's a time and a place for them, and used properly, they're great. But they need to be used alongside police officers in community teams.
Do you think there's also a problem, though, with perception? As Chris has been in touch and says, please speak to your police guests and say that police solve virtually no community crime. What are they doing apart from policing Twitter? That we've seen, for example, quite a lot of action relating to, for example, the riots that happened a few months ago, and very swift action there. But when it comes to other kinds of lower level disorder, police and policing seem to go after the easy stuff that they can go after. The difficult stuff they seem not to be focusing on.
They focus on the difficult stuff all the time, and your caller, I didn't catch his name, was it Chris? Unfortunately, he's fallen for the nonsense spouted by the right-wing narrative about police spending all their time policing Twitter. They don't. They spend very, very little time on that. There's an argument they should be even less, or they could do it differently, and there's different ways of doing things, and there's things that can be improved, of course. But it's a tiny proportion of their time. The vast majority of their time is spent dealing with serious crime, to the exclusion of a lot of middling crime, if you want to describe it that way,
so you
that
say
simply doesn't have a resource at all.
OK, and that's part of the problem, because I guess the crime that we see day to day are people skipping fares, people nicking stuff out of the corner shop, perhaps drugs and drug running, various other things that we see on a day-to-day level. And I'm assuming that the policing resource just hasn't been enough in order to make sure that that is taken. Is the only way to deal with it is some kind of zero-tolerance policing?
Yeah, it's pointless having zero tolerance if you've got zero cop time available to deal with it. You can make as many statements, laws and policies as you like, but unless you've got someone to implement them, and in terms of policing, I'm afraid there's only one answer to that, and that is the uniformed constable, delivering the vast majority of policing services, assisted by others that move into specialist roles like detective and murder squad or whatever. So you need uniformed bobbies on the street. They deliver a myriad things, much of which isn't and can't be counted, but which is absolutely essential as the bedrock on which the rest of policing stands. If you take away the foundations of a building, then the rest of it teeters and eventually falls over. And if you take away the foundation of policing, which is uniformed cops on the street, the rest of it teeters, and we're there at the moment, and it will fall over. And just finally,
to you, Yvette Cooper says she's bringing back the foundations and hiring. Is she making the right choices?
Most of what she's done that I'm aware of in detail, yes, it all sounds like it's going the right way, but there's such a long way to go. And policing's not one of those things that you make a change and you see the difference this afternoon. There's a lead time of 3 to 5 years for most policing changes. So it'll be a long time before we see improvement, but I think she's heading in the right direction from what she's saying.
Well, then there we go. At least somebody is. There we are. Peter Kirkham, former DCI Met officer. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk, where we return to your calls and comments talking about the reasons why the UK economy is struggling. Let's go to Dave, who's in Durham. Dave, good afternoon.
Hi there.
Hi, Dave. What have you got for me?
Yeah, this government is just beyond belief. The policies they've put in place to tax businesses almost out of existence. It makes it so difficult to employ people. My local tool delivery company and tool supply company, Axminster, they've actually closed their local branch. They're based in the southwest, but in the northeast they've closed it, so they've pulled out of the north completely. They no longer have a branch. They've closed in October, purely as a result of increased costs. So I went to visit the other day and it's completely closed up and shut. Disappeared. So now I won't be buying tools from Axminster because I can't physically see them.
And I suppose when you hear from somebody like Paul Richards, who was talking earlier on the programme, saying, well, you know, we're making all these right choices and there's loads of investment and it's all good and we have to sort of, I don't know, raise the money and you know, invest in our public services. He seems to ignore the reality, which is businesses cannot afford to pay these taxes, and they will make choices both on investment and hiring or firing their staff based on all of those things.
It's a knock-on effect of it as well, because now I can no longer purchase tools at a local store. Where do I go? I've got to travel miles to buy things. And the people, Labour government, are talking complete nonsense. It isn't just that as well. You've got this net zero, constant push for net zero. People can't afford to purchase EV cars that are no longer suitable for what they need. You know, I drive a petrol car and I tow a trailer occasionally, not very often, but it does the job. It's a 1.5 petrol car. I did have a diesel before and it worked fine, but now I have a petrol car and it just tows the trailer, it just manages to do that. But to get an EV car to do that, I have to pay probably about £20,000 more than what I'm paying now. The car costs about £30,000 at the moment, just affordable, the monthly payments, with a mortgage and a family. If I have to buy an EV, the minimal size of EV I need to pay for is around about £50,000 to do the same job.
And that is probably the reason why the policies or the ideas or the direction that they talk about is, in reality, difficult to achieve. Dave in Durham, thank you for your call. 03444991000 is the telephone number. Tell me why you think the UK economy is struggling. And also, we may very well find that, I don't know, we're going to be talking about relationships as well, good, bad and ugly, after this, and taking more of your calls. That's coming up on Talk.
We forget this, of course. Keir Starmer's got a supermajority in Parliament, but he got fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn did in 2017, right? This is not a popular guy. This is someone whose opposition was split between Reform, Conservatives, those staying at home and protest at how bad the last government was. And every step he's taking is designed to keep him there for as long as possible. And it's not just the 3 steps you outlined. He's also trying to fiddle with the House of Lords.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
The time is 9 minutes to 5 o'clock. This Monday afternoon, it's Drive with me, James Max, with you till 7 o'clock here on Talk. Asking you to get involved in the conversation. Tell me why you think the UK economy is struggling. 0344 499 1000. Just before we turn our attention to how you can perhaps save your relationship or deal with various different issues or otherwise, which we'll do in a sec, let's get this voice note, which you can always send me a voice note, by the way. You just send a WhatsApp message to 0344 499 1000. Let's see what Mike in Lancashire has to say.
Hi, James. Just watching Freezing This Christmas raised £50,000 for Age UK. Does that mean £25,000 is going to the government with a 50% tax on charities and stuff? Just a thought, James. Merry Christmas.
Well, of course, the point that you raise, Mike, is that all charities and all companies are going to have to pay more for their employees. Because when national insurance goes up, that means that their bills go up. So one national charity that I'm involved in, we're going to have to find £750,000 to pay that bill. A club, which is a CAS, Community Amateur Sports Club, that I chair, we're going to have to find an extra £20,000 to deal with these tax changes that Rachel Rees has put in place. So anybody who wants to come on and tell me that she knows what she's talking about, fine, you be my guest. But the reality is, it's going to cost jobs. It's going to stop investment. And if anybody thinks that the economy is just going to flatline and stay at zero, no. I think we're heading towards recession. Unless they change their plans and policies, we are heading towards recession. Anyway, let's find out if we got some advice on what happens if your relationship is heading towards recession, i.e. it's all disaster. Paul Britton is a leading criminal defence lawyer at Britton and Times Solicitors, joins me now. Paul, very good afternoon to you.
James, hello, how are you?
I'm very well indeed, thank you. My relationship here at Talk seems to be improved on the basis that, whether we're just going back for good old times or I'm here for good, who only knows? But relationships can be fixed, Paul.
This is a promotion for you, isn't it, James, on the big drive home from
it's an aspirational promotion for me, yes.
All right, look, so what are we talking about? We're talking about relationships at Christmas. These are really trying times, and I have to say, as a firm of solicitors, we see such an influx of divorce inquiries in January and February. And right now, divorce lawyers up and down the country will be getting ready for the post-New Year celebrations. And what it is, it's just that you're put into a close space. It's a bit like COVID. COVID was also great for family lawyers, because when you put people together, then you kind of realise whether you do or you don't like them.
I mean, I don't want to be rude here, but you lawyers just rub your hands with glee at the prospect of somebody else's misfortune. You take massive fees, you put wedges in relationships that don't need to be put. You fight for this, fight for that, get for everything you can, hire people. You just make it all worse, you lot.
No, we don't, James. I mean, you have to remember that what happens in the process of divorce will stay with our clients for the rest of their life. And the more that they can get in terms of a financial settlement that's fair, the better that their prospects are going to be. I mean, we all know the traditional setup that you've got husband and wife. Maybe the husband goes out, has a fabulous career, earns a six-figure salary, and the wife stays at home, raises a family, and she sacrifices her career. Then later on in the relationship, they decide to split up. It's not fair that she goes back into the job market on £20,000 a year or £30,000 a year when he's been able to promote his salary right up to £150,000 in some cases and has a fabulous pension. So what divorce lawyers tend to do is try to make sure that it is fair, and the courts will look at what resources are available and then decide how they're going to split them.
I have to say that that was actually a very good point, Paul. So thank you for that. So
it works both ways. These days, sometimes
but let me ask you. So for the people who find that for whatever reason their relationship is in trouble over Christmas, of course, the advice to try and help put things back together, sometimes that can work. But what would you say to somebody who there is a massive bust up that they just decide that this is it? Is it go and speak to your lawyers as soon as Christmas is done?
Yeah, well, look, you don't have to go down a contentious route. There is what we call collaborative law, where you have one divorce, one lawyer. We don't tend to take on that sort of work. We find that it doesn't really work. It's all fine trying to agree it until we start valuing pensions and spousal maintenance and who's going to have the children, and we get child contact and all that sort of stuff involved. But there is a collaborative way of doing it. It doesn't tend to blow up like you've said. It tends to be this is now the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th Christmas together. In-laws are coming over, and a lot of people say, this is the last year. I just can't bear to do this again.
And I suppose if that is the case, you do need to... I mean, do you suggest that people go and get advice away from a legal team to talk about, somebody's own position? Because I suppose, within a marriage, you might have family considerations. There's all sorts of ramifications of your decisions. Having said that, there's only one person to look after you, and that's you. Do you suggest that people go off and perhaps receive advice on that front before they go down the legal route? Or do you just say, look, if you made your decision, off we go, ka-ching, ka-ching, let's rack and stack those lovely lawyers' bills?
Everybody's going to be in a different boat, and if they feel that marriage counselling or some sort of counselling is going to help save their relationship and there is still a spark there, then absolutely. One of the questions I normally ask my clients if I'm dealing with a divorce inquiry is it done? Are you done? Has the switch flicked over? Is that it now? Because once you start this process, it's only going to get worse and you're going to see the other side's true colours. So it's got to be all for nothing.
Yeah, I guess that is the point. Paul Britton, leading criminal defence lawyer at Britton & Time Solicitors. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, giving us that sunny upland look as to what happens if your relationship's gone south. And perhaps you do find after Christmas, I mean, it is that time of year. We have, Divorce Monday in January when people just say, can't take it anymore. Well, hopefully there's good advice for you out there, if that is the case. Meanwhile, coming to your comments, Glyn says, James, just letting you know you're missed in the morning. Well, thank you, Glyn. In answer to your question, however, why is the economy struggling? It's simple. Labour is in charge, says Chris in Redditch. So there we go. 03, and somebody here's just said hello. Well, hi. If you want to get in touch, it's really helpful, that. If you want to get in touch, you can do so. You can send me a text on 87222. Start your text with the word talk. You can always send me an X message on @talkTV, and you can give me a call. We'll be taking more of your calls on the economy and indeed anything else we've been discussing on 0344 499 1000. Still to come on Drive on Talk, we'll be turning our attention to those big political stories. I'm delighted to say I'm going to be joined by James Heale. He is the political editor and correspondent at the Spectator. We'll be talking to him about those big stories, whether it's Labour's frustration, Yvette Cooper, or indeed Lord Mandelson. Yeah, don't forget him going over to the US. And, of course, gerrymandering. Oh, no, it's not gerrymandering at all, giving the right of voting to 16 and 17-year-olds. No, it's just good sense. Yeah. That absolutely makes sense to me. Oh, and the Archbishop of York, that story too. All of those stories, plus more of your calls, that's all coming up on Drive Time on Talk. Oh, the number, it's 0344 499 1000. I'm James Max.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. Shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, or far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It's coming up to 3 minutes past 5 o'clock this Monday, the 23rd of December. This is Drive here on Talk. I'm with you until 7 o'clock. Now, there's all sorts still to come. During the course of this hour, we'll be turning our attention to maybe some food items. I'll be speaking to Mark Wogan. He's not only the host of the Spooning podcast, but also co-founder of Home Sliced Pizza. We'll be getting some tips from him. We'll be talking to Bobby Seagull. Remember him, the maths teacher? And also the host of the Maths Appeal podcast, plus very brainy man off University Challenge. Him, Bobby Seagull, we'll be speaking to him about whether or not teachers should be able to work from home, and finding out about the very latest on that appalling attack in Germany, and going through all the big stories with James Heale, the political correspondent at The Spectator. But also still taking your calls on what you think the reasons are for the UK economy struggling. It's 0344 499 1000. So a lot to get through, and I'd like to speak to you. So if you've never called a radio station before, perhaps you haven't spoken, or maybe you haven't spoken to me since, that early breakfast show? Yeah. You can give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. I want to find out from you how you respond to the difficulties and the problems of the UK economy. Is it a blame storm towards Labour, or is it a whole range of factors? There are a few things I'm surprised that no one's mentioned, but I'll leave you to perhaps pick those out. 0344 499 1000. Now, I did say that we will go to your calls, so let's do it. Roy is in Brentwood. Roy, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon to you.
Hi, so what can you tell me?
Well, I'm just saying I just can't believe how irresponsible this Labour government is with their policies. For example, driving the non-doms out of the country. Why drive these rich people out when they can spend their money in this country and provide jobs? Why go back on the waspy women when basically Starmer and Rachel Reeves all was before and said they would provide the pensions once they got into power? And I can't understand how this government is giving billions and billions of our money away, 15 billion on overseas aid, 11 million on climate change, 4 billion to Ukraine, 500 million to African farmers, and they say they've got a black hole. Why are they borrowing and spending money we have not got? It just doesn't add up to me as a businessman.
And this is the point. And just unpicking some of the things you said there, Roy, because I think there will be people up and down the country listening to what you just said, going, yeah, that all makes good sense to me. What I don't understand about Rachel Reeves and her policies is she keeps talking about growing the economy, yet every single policy she seems to have put in place appears to indicate that she has no intention of growing the economy in the ways that you and I perhaps would like to see it done. I don't want to see an economy which is grown by a public sector getting fat and spending too much of your money. I don't think it makes sense. I would like to go back to that time where Margaret Thatcher said, this isn't our money, as in the government's money, this is your money, and we, the government, are here to spend it wisely. So I do want government to spend money wisely, but I want them to spend it on the things that we need them to spend it on. I don't want them to start spending it on housing that they shouldn't be building. I don't want them to spend it on giving pay rises to people who are not necessarily that productive, or doing jobs that aren't required. I don't, as I agree with you, Roy, I don't want money going overseas to projects and to people who don't need it.
Well, the point is, no economy that I know from history has ever grown with high debts, high borrowing, high taxes, and you're never going to grow an economy from the public sector, because most of the money comes actually from the private sector to actually support the public.
And you see, and that I think is the most important point that you've made, Roy, which is if you want to grow an economy, you have to grow it with private sector investment and development, which means you have to reward people for hard work, you have to reward people for taking risk, and you have to provide an opportunity in which they can employ people. And if you make it more expensive to employ people because you shove up national insurance, if you make it more difficult because you put in more red tape, if you make it more difficult because you give people extra rights that you can't fire people who are rubbish, a whole range of problems and issues then ensue. And international business will say, you know what, United Kingdom PLC, we're not interested. We're going to go elsewhere.
But the thing is, it's important, the point you mentioned, how is Rachel Reeves going to grow the economy from the public sector? How will she answer that question?
Well, she would answer the question and she would say, yes, well, we're partnering with the private sector. And she would keep saying, I mean, as the comment that she made, which I thought was fascinating. So she said in response to the flatlining economy, she said, the budget and our plan for change will deliver sustainable long-term growth. I'm not quite sure how, but that's what she says. Putting more money in people's pockets. Again, I don't see any evidence of that. Through increased investment and relentless reform. They haven't reformed anything. They haven't increased investment because they've just increased spending. That's not investment. They haven't put more money in your pocket. They've taken out money from your pocket. And I see no plan for change delivering sustainable long-term growth because they've actually sucked money out of the economy, about 2% of GDP, into their coffers to spoof on whatever they want to spoof on.
Yeah, I just don't understand their strategy. With excessive taxation, they're driving investment out of this country.
I think they are, Roy. I think you're absolutely right. You've made some super points. Thank you very much indeed for joining the conversation. That's Roy in Brentwood. Maybe you want to join the conversation this afternoon. It's 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, let's speak to James Heale, the political correspondent at The Spectator. Joins me now. James, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, James.
Thank you very much indeed for joining. I mean, you couldn't wish for sort of worse news, if you like, on the economy if you tried. Labour have come up with this response to it. I suppose they're hoping that we're all going to sort of bury this economic bad news in I don't know, an overdose of turkey, Christmas pudding and festive cheer.
I think that's very much the hope of it, and I understand later today we're expecting Keir Starmer's Christmas message, and I suspect that is a message that's going to dwell less on the current economic circumstances and very much be more a message of looking to the future and hope and change in the future, because right now things are really not looking good for the UK economy and the UK PLC.
Now, let's just have a look at some of those things. So, the state of Britain's stalling economy is disappointing, according to a Labour cabinet minister. Leading business groups said the country's fiscal outlook was headed for the worst of all worlds, and that's from the CBI. So the CBI, look, they've had their own issues, fair enough. But what I don't understand is that Rachel Reeves has said that she was going to grow the economy, and arguably, given the numbers, she's crashed it. Liz Truss was hounded out of office for doing that, and frankly, she didn't do such a bad job in comparison to Rachel, did she?
Well, I think these are very different circumstances and how much you can kind of blame the Chancellor for the decisions they've made. But I will say certainly that they've made a huge amount of their kind of credentialism. They've said that we're going to do things very differently. We're going to have a premium stability premium. And actually, it turns out it doesn't look so much as stability as more like stagnation. So I think that what did for Liz Truss was the sudden speed of it. With this Labour government currently, it looks more like a much more drawn out, prolonged and protracted affair.
How long have Labour got before the restlessness sets in either within their party or indeed the nation? I mean, we've already seen the polls which have seen, 19 points taken off Labour's popularity, putting him now on a par with Jeremy Corbyn at his low point. But how much longer can we have that? I mean, if we have 6 further months of bad news, I'm assuming at that point somebody will say, look, this just isn't working.
I mean, I think we've already got some restlessness. Let's not forget that, of course, that it was within 100 days that Number 10 got rid of its chief of staff. That was a reflection, I think, of the early blues of this government. I think that it's now stabilised a little better. But as you say, James, if things aren't turning around in 12 months, that's going to be an issue. Not least, of course, because at that point, I think that it's much harder for Labour ministers to keep saying, oh, we had a terrible inheritance. Well, I think that worked in the early days, but the further we get away from July the 4th, and the more and more which businesses keep saying, no, we're making these investment decisions because of your rhetoric, your policies, your tax changes, then it's going to get much harder for the government, not least, of course, because growth was supposedly the number one mission of Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. And if they're not getting that by the end of next year, you wait to think, how is it going to turn around in the medium to long term?
Now, let's talk a little bit about the Conservatives, because, frankly, they're not faring much better. Kemi Badenoch, of course, is the new leader. The only thing she managed to get any attention for this week was visiting Jeremy Clarkson on his farm. She seems to think that having policy isn't very important, and just coming up with almost university-led sound bites is going to lead her to number 10. Is she as delusional as Keir Starmer?
Well, I think that the optimist case for Kemi Badenoch, shall we say, is that, Labour signed up to a whole bunch of stuff which is now coming back to haunt them, such as the pledge for WASPy women. Kemi Badenoch is now keen to try and avoid those pitfalls by saying, look, we're going to have a discussion around principles first, and then we'll get to policies. The danger is, though, James, as you say, you lose the first impression, that all-important first impression to define yourself. And second of all, are they just going to get overlooked in favour of reform, who seem to have all the best tunes at the moment? So I do think there's a lot of Conservatives right now who are saying we do need a bit of policy and we need to come up with it before those May local elections.
Let's talk a little bit about the United States of America. We can't ignore the fact that they're going to have a new president taking office in the new year. It's quite interesting, some breaking news for you. Matt Gaetz, who was briefly Donald Trump's nominee for US Attorney General, who paid women for sex, including a 17-year-old girl, used drugs whilst he was a member of Congress, according to a committee. The House Ethics Committee's report concluded there was substantial evidence that the former Florida congressman violated House rules, state and federal laws, and other standards of conduct, banning prostitution, statutory rape, illegal drug use and obstruction of Congress. It doesn't say much for Donald Trump's judgment, does it?
I think that it once again shows that Donald Trump has a fairly eclectic range of people within his circle. Matt Gaetz, of course, as you say, was one of the most controversial ones. And there was even MAGA Republicans saying he wasn't going to get past the Senate confirmation floor. And yet, of course, that's also part of the same proposed cabinet as Marco Rubio, who is very much within the Western Atlanticist tradition, very mainstream conservative figure relatively in the Republican circles right now. So again, as you say, James, I mean, Donald Trump's judgment has been, shall we say, all over the place at times. And I think on this one occasion, it was clearly the most outlandish pick. It was clearly a pick that was never going to get past Republicans, let alone Democrats. And I think that it's no surprise now that he won't be in charge of the Department of Justice, given all the allegations that have been levelled against him over the past 3 years.
And what do you make of this report that Lord Mendelssohn, who famously has made some somewhat negative comments about the incoming president, but anyway, US envoy as he will be, set to work with Nigel Farage to win over Trump. Really?
I mean, I'll believe it when I see it in terms of how much this cooperation is actually going to take the form of, working together. These comments that Lord Mendelssohn made were back in November, the comments about working with Farage, and he said, well, whoever got it would have to work with people in Trump's orbit. Farage is very keen to present himself at that. I think it's worth looking at how Farage has always said that he wanted to work within the national interest. This was something he said far back as 2016 when Trump got first elected. We'll await to see how it actually manifests itself, but I think that although there's been some kind words between Nigel and Peter Mandelson, I very much doubt it's going to be a kind of formal role that perhaps Farage would like it to be.
So, Nigel Farage, of course, leader of Reform, they've seen a resurgence and perhaps a surge in their popularity since Labour were elected. Are they going to become the main opposition, do you think? Do you think that that 2025 is the year in which we see Reform continue with that popularity? And I don't know, do you think that Nigel Farage will play a greater part in that politics?
I think increasingly we're seeing signs that Reform are a part of a permanent feature of British politics rather than a temporary blip. And I think that we will see them entrenched in part of the country come May when they have those local elections. They're expected to win hundreds of councillors there, a precursor to 2026 when they may well overtake the Conservatives in both the Welsh and Scottish parliaments. So I think that they are on course to upset British politics in a way that the Liberals and SDP tried in the 80s. 100 years ago, the Labour Party did to the Liberals of Asquith and Lloyd George. So it's a really big generational shift. It's too soon to tell, frankly, what impact there'll be. We've only 1 year into this 5-year parliament. A lot can change. You cast your mind back 12 months, and obviously it was Richard Tice leading Reform, who were about on 10-11%. Now they've doubled that in a year. Could it go up in another year? I'm sceptical it'll see the same growth, but on current trends, they certainly look like a formidable force to be reckoned with.
Meanwhile, the right to vote for 16 and 17-year-olds could be included in an elections bill next year, according to the Commons leader. I mean, this would have a major impact, and presumably Labour's got to get votes from wherever they can. The younger vote is perhaps more likely, given that they've managed to upset WASPy women and anybody on a pension.
Yes, I think that there could be some interesting different upsets because of this, though. You've got to remember that in the last century, every single time the franchise was expanded, the electorate then, who was given the vote, chose to vote against the incumbent party at the time. So, for instance, when 18 to 21-year-olds were given the vote by Harold Wilson's government in the late 1960s, subsequently that cohort voted to elect them out in 1970. So I think sometimes it's a little bit of a misnomer sometimes to always say, well, these people will therefore vote for X or Y. Gratitude is a very limited currency in politics, and Reform are certainly being very bullish about their chances with these 16 to 18-year-olds. We're going to see a test case of that, as I say, in the Senate elections next year, in 2026, in 18 months' time, because they think they're very good on TikTok and Gen Z and how those voters will go down. As you say, though, James, I mean, Labour seem to be alienating voters everywhere. I'm not sure there'll be sort of many thousands or millions of 16 to 18-year-olds going out there to vote Labour enthusiastically. So I'll wait to see if it actually gets through the line, but given how many times 16 to 18-year-old votes have failed before.
I'm going to be very interested also to hear how the younger generation vote, and there is some discussion that indeed Reform, because of their social media policies, are extremely popular with the younger lot, as opposed to the Conservatives, who seem to be utterly out of touch. And I'm also pleased to hear that you refer to them as Gen Z as well. There are those who seem to take the American pronunciation, which I don't think that should be allowed. Just finally to you, quick question. Stephen Cottrell, so Archbishop of York, he's under pressure. He might be stepping in for the outgoing Archbishop of Canterbury, but there are calls for him to resign because of how he handled various different cases. The more information that seems to be published on this, the least likely it is that he's going to stay in post. A huge amount of pressure on Stephen Cottrell. From the evidence I've seen, I think he should step down. If it was a normal workplace, he would go. Can he really stay in that position of Archbishop of York?
I think that there's a large number of clergymen who will be meeting their flock this Christmas and discussing this very issue in some capacity. I think what's actually keeping him partly in the role at the moment is the fact that the Archbishop of Canterbury, the one man senior to him in the hierarchy of the Church of England, had to go. If a second one had to go, the most senior ranking member, when Welby steps down next month, I mean, that really would plunge the Church of England into an absolute open crisis. So I think more revelations will come out over the Christmas period. It's a period when a lot of people are thinking about their local church and what it means for the future of the country. and I think it's about 50-50 whether he stays or whether he goes.
OK, just finally to you before I let you go, James, as we look into 2025, what are the, I don't know, unusual things that we should perhaps be looking out for, or the things that you're thinking that you might be writing about in the next 12 months?
I think that it's going to obviously be America's the main story, I think, in terms of tariffs and what that means, the unpredictability of having Donald Trump, who seems to take Nixon's theory of the madman foreign policy to new levels. In terms of interesting on different things, I think it's just going to be increasing curveballs, things to do with energy prices and the economy will have lots of upsets and shocks. And given the way the last 12 months have gone, I think that anyone who can say what the definitive story will be here right now is going to be with the egg on their face. So I wait to see with great interest, but I suspect there'll be lots to write about, whatever form it comes.
I suspect you might be right. James Heale, political correspondent at The Spectator. Thank you very much indeed, and wish you a very Merry Christmas. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us here on Talk, where we'll take some more of your calls in a few moments' time. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number on that. Plus, we'll get further details on that appalling attack at a German Christmas market. We'll get some thoughts from Duncan Garden. That's going to be coming up next here on Talk.
What do you think Labour has actually done well?
So far in government, I think what they've done is they've turned around the country economically to a different position, a different way of doing things. Ultimately, they've made difficult
downwards?
That even I disagree with.
The economy is worse now than it was when Labour took over.
Right now, yeah, we're talking 5.5 months in.
But you just told me they've done a brilliant job with the economy.
About a long-term...
Hang on a minute, you just said what Labour did well was the economy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
24 minutes past 5 o'clock this Monday afternoon. It's Drive with me, James Max, with you till 7 o'clock. Taking a look at the UK economy. Why is it struggling? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number with the data that came out today that said that the economy flatlined between July and September. Those figures revised slightly downwards. But then, of course, the prospects for October to December, are they going to be any better? I suspect not. Inflation on the up. Job prospects perhaps not looking as good. And in particular, the changes in national insurance and pay reviews and everything else, which are going to find further pinches to companies, investment, budgets, and indeed spending. So I'm asking, why is the UK's economy struggling? 0344 499 1000. Plus, if you want to talk to me about your situation, I'd like to hear. So how you may be facing this. Perhaps your business is doing well or not so well. Maybe you've been told that you're not getting a pay rise. Maybe you've had to make some decisions about how many people are employed where you are. Or maybe you're having to do extra shifts or extra hours to cover for those that should be seeing an extra person employed, but your company just can't afford it. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, of course, a story that was prolific and discussed over the weekend is the terrible attack that took place in Germany on Friday night. The car attack by a now known to be a 50-year-old Saudi-born man being held in custody in Germany. An attack on hundreds of people visiting Magdeburg's Christmas market. The attack killed 5 people, including a 9-year-old boy and 4 women, and left more than 200 people injured, with many in a critical condition. Police believing the suspect acted alone, but significant details now emerged about him that indicate this was a very different attack from anything that Germany has seen before. German authorities now under pressure to explain why a doctor accused of murdering a child and 4 women in a car at a Christmas market wasn't stopped, despite being well known to police. Well, let's speak to Duncan Gardam, security analyst and international terrorism expert. Duncan, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, James.
So, if somebody is known to the police and warnings are given by another nation, what does that actually mean? How much do they actually know about an individual and the risks?
Well, it really depends what the nature of those warnings were. And in this case, we understand that Abdul Mohsen appears to be an anti-government activist who has sought asylum in Germany from where he's criticising Saudi Arabia. And so in many ways, you might expect Saudi Arabia to be screaming at the Germans to try and stop him, particularly given their human rights record and their record against anti-government activists in the past. And we'll all remember the incident involving the Washington Post journalist Khashoggi, who ended up being murdered and dismembered by Saudi operatives. And that is the level of distrust that they have against activists who are opposing the regime. So in many ways, the Germans may have taken those warnings with a pinch of salt, one suspects.
And one looks at not only this attack, but also perhaps what it does politically on the streets of a nation which has such an appalling attack. The ripples and impact is far wider than, sadly, just the victims and those disrupted by all of this. Because I'm assuming it feeds far-right narrative and creates significant and perhaps further terrorist situations.
Yeah, this is a difficult situation here, James, because this guy has not done the attack, as far as we know at the moment, for what we might consider the touchstones of Islamist terrorist motivation that have been generated by Al-Qaeda and ISIS over the years and continue to be generated by ISIS. They're getting less and less pickup, but in this case, this individual doesn't seem to have acted out of those motives at all. And in fact, his motivation appears to be an anti-state one, which is one that we're seeing more from the far right. In other words, he feels that the German state wasn't backing him in his campaign to try and fight the Saudi regime and to try and back people who wanted to move away from Islam. And he felt that he was being isolated and left alone. And it's given rise to a certain level, it appears at least, of conspiracy theories from his messages online. And there we are in that kind of dangerous world that we're now inhabiting, where we see people with a lot of mixed ideologies, uncertain ideologies, changing ideologies, and those are particularly difficult for the security services to track. We are used to the Islamist thing. We understand that. We are beginning to get a grip on some of the far-right anti-state stuff. But when people are mixing things together, it is much more difficult to spot that move from rhetoric, and some of the rhetoric can be violent, but to actual violent action.
Just finally to you, how concerned should we be in this country about whether it's terrorists or terrorist activity, whether it's at this time of year or any time of year? Are we in a position where we should be more alert, or are we in a position where authorities are indicating that maybe there are lower levels of risk?
Sadly, James, we are at a heightened level of risk. Christmas is a time where we have seen attacks in the past. We see attacks at all times of year, but sometimes at Christmas. Christmas markets in the UK are particularly well defended against these kinds of attacks. We have a lot of expertise in terms of putting protective measures around these markets. We're well aware of the risk of using vehicles as weapons. Everyone should be alert. The police have sent out their Christmas messages asking people to be aware of not just of the traditional suspect packages, but also to be aware of their friends and neighbours if they're acting strangely or unusually, perhaps to check if they're okay, and if they don't appear to be all right, to try and seek some medical or police help to give them some support. We all need to be aware at this particular time of year. Of course we do, but we also need to learn to be resilient. These things will keep coming, at least for the moment. People are being motivated by narcissistic and self-serving messages that they're getting off the internet, and we have to become used to that, but also be our own best defenders against it.
There we go. Duncan Gardam, security analyst and international terrorism expert. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon here on Talk. It's much appreciated. Meanwhile, we'll be turning our attention not only back to your calls about the UK economy, why is it struggling, 0344 499 1000 on that. But of course, if you wish to pick up on any of the things we've been discussing this afternoon, you can get involved in the conversation. We want to get as many of your voices on as possible. If you wish to talk about the stories that James Heale and I were going through, political or otherwise, or perhaps you have comments on the security risk and indeed the terrorism risk, you can join that conversation too. But in particular, the UK economy, it is struggling. It has flatlined. Those numbers did come out this morning, indicating that growth between July and September was actually revised slightly downwards. Now, 0.1% down to zero doesn't really make that much difference in the odds of things, but it makes a psychological difference, doesn't it? And I think the economy is struggling, not just because of the legacy. I mean, all this hogwash that you hear about the previous 14 years of Tory rule and all that stuff, fine, blame if you like. But the decisions and the rhetoric coming from this government, this Prime Minister, this Chancellor, have also significantly contributed to the problems we face. They're making ideological political decisions based on what they like and don't like about people with money, of means, frightening them away from our country, frightening them away from making investments. They're changing the tax system, adding thousands, tens of thousands, millions of pounds onto wage bills and to tax bills for companies up and down this nation. And then they say, yeah, we want to, encourage investment and companies to grow. Well, how are you going to grow if you just put your cost base up? It's basic mathematics. And talking of mathematics, very shortly we'll be speaking to Bobby Seagull, the maths teacher and host of the Maths Appeal podcast. We'll be talking about teachers apparently needing the right to work from home. Really? Well, I said the phone lines are open. You can join that conversation. 0344 499 1000. We'll take more of your calls and speak to Bobby. That's next on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
5:35 is the time. It's Drive with me, James Banks. I'm with you until 7 o'clock here on Talk. So, very shortly, we'll return to your calls on why the UK's economy is struggling. 0344 499 1000 on that. You can send me a text if you like, 87222, or you can X me, at TalkTV, at the James Max. And you'll find me also on the Instas. I do post some hilarious stuff on the Instas sometimes. Actually, mostly pictures of dogs or Christmas trees, or both. Anyway, if you want to follow me, you can do so. I'd be delighted to have you on board. Meanwhile, there's a report in the papers today that says that teachers need the right to work from home. This is according to the Education Secretary. I mean, I've told you that I don't think our politicians know what the heck they're talking about. Now, I would have thought that... Look, I do understand that teachers did manage to teach remotely during COVID. Whether it was effective or not is another matter. But I'm not a teacher, but I know somebody who is. Bobby Seagull is a maths teacher and host of the Maths Appeal podcast, and he joins me now. Bobby, very good afternoon to you.
And I can also confirm that your Instagram is delightful to follow for those looking for an account over Christmas.
Look at you with your Christmas jumper. I mean, for the love of all that's holy. I mean, is that a bet?
No, we had Christmas jumper day in school on Thursday, and I felt emboldened. My students voted for my jumper, so I gave them a series of jumpers to vote for in a particular order. So this is my second jumper of the Christmas season, and so thank you to my students for voting Mr. Seagull's wardrobe choices.
Okay, well, they've obviously spotted that you have a sense of humour, because. Or alternatively, like a dare. Anyway, it's there, and in a few days' time, you won't be able to wear it anymore for another 365 days. So that's marvellous news. Now, teachers, do they need the right to work from home? How on earth would this work?
So, James, let me look at what the Secretary is proposing, so Bridget Phillipson. So, currently in teaching, we all have what's known as PPA time. So there's planning, preparation and assessment. This is where you're planning lessons, you're marking exams, getting work ready for students outside of your face time with young people. And actually, the reality is lesson planning and marking often, again, us teachers, we will take it home, do it at evenings or weekends. And what the proposal is all about is not like, oh, it's 10 o'clock now, I'm going to nip home for an hour and do some marking there. It's if you've got, let's say, Thursday afternoon or 2-3 hours where you're not in front of children, those times can be chunked together and put away from the classroom. So students, young people, they'll not be losing time in front of the teacher. It's just to give teachers more flexible allowance so they can choose to work from home when it suits them. And I'll tell you why, James, this is really important, because in the teaching profession, there is a big recruitment and retention crisis. And again, I'm a statistician, I'm a mathematician, a few numbers for you. Within 3 years of people joining the profession, 1 in 4 leave. So within 3 years. And you go down to 5 years, 1 in 3 teachers will leave the profession within 5 years. And there are many reasons for this. There are things like behavior, pay, working conditions, but I actually think the lack of flexibility makes an impact. And actually, the data bears this as well. So actually, the largest group of people cohort leaving the teaching profession are women aged 30 to 39. And these are often women having their first or second child. And actually last year we had, I think 2022, 2023, we had nearly 30,000 female educators leaving the profession.
But then how can you... Yeah, but you see, I suppose here comes the practical issue that, say, for example, you obviously don't want people to leave the profession. But if, for example, somebody is of the age where a family begins, it's unlike a company that you can't just suddenly say to your students, by the way, you know, Mrs. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so is going to be taking time off now because they've got to have time off from child and childcare and all this sort of business. Because, you know, as a school, you have to be offering that educational provision throughout. So it's going to be very difficult to manage, isn't it? Or alternatively, is it that we need to look at teaching profession, teachers as a different kind of resource to allow people to come in and go out of the workforce when they need to?
So I think it's the way to think about it is either you lose the resource, the teacher completely, or you can make flexible arrangements. Because again, a lot of these female educators in particular, and men, of course, they go on to become tutors, teaching, let's say, maths or English from home on Zoom, probably for better pay and easier working conditions. But if you want to keep them in the classroom, it's offering them flexible. So it's not saying, oh, you don't have to come in Zoom lessons. In fact, I'm against Zoom lessons. They have to be done in person. But if, let's say, a teacher has, in a 5-day working week, they've got half a day allocated to planning, if the school can be flexible and say, actually, on a Thursday morning or a Wednesday afternoon, you can work from home doing that planning, then actually it doesn't impact the students. So I think it's trying to work out arrangements so that teachers are still delivering the lessons in front of children, but it does require work from the schools to, again, I've seen teachers that do the organisation, the lesson planning for the entire school, and all the teachers. It's like a military operation. They're sitting there looking at all the 100 teachers, all the thousands of lessons, and putting things together like a military commander. So I would say it requires more effort with the planning stage from schools, but that is ultimately the best way of making sure we don't lose lots of people from the profession.
And I suppose just finally to you, Bobby, as you perhaps look at trying to persuade more people into the profession. I can understand, chunking time together. That it's not about working from home or giving people the right to. It's just perhaps being a little bit more organised and saying, look, you are going to have to do some prep and preparation, etc. And so it might be better done away from a school environment where you might be disturbed. I don't know. But setting that aside, how on earth are you going to persuade more people into the profession? I mean, presumably you just got to throw a whole load of money at it.
So I think money always helps in any profession, whether you're looking at our healthcare profession, our infrastructure, engineering. Putting more money will attract more people. But again, why do people join the teaching profession? Why did I join the profession? Is because we have a passion for a subject. We are really enthused about helping pass on our knowledge to the next generation. And that's a vocation. So you're never going to be earning bucket loads of money with a vocation, but we have to make sure the working conditions work for teachers. And again, part of it, I think one of the big reasons, James, is actually behaviour. Because when you join as a teacher, you're fresh faced in your mid-20s, you join thinking, oh, like Robin Williams, that film where he's a teacher, the name eludes me as a quizzer, I should remember. But he turns up and he's really passionate about teaching English. We need to capture that enthusiasm, but people leave, partly pay, but I think it's a lot to do with behaviour of students. And I think this is a wider society issue where parents sometimes don't respect teachers or schools. So how can you expect the young people to do? So I think the behaviour piece, if the government's listening, if they are out there, leaving Westminster for the Christmas holidays, I implore them to look at the behaviour in schools and what can be done to make that better. And again, having tougher sanctions for children. Also, I've heard proposals about fining parents for bad behaviour of their young people. I would be all for that.
Well, then, there you go. Dead Poets Society is the name of the film.
Thank you.
Thank you. See, look at that. The brain still works. Bobby, just before I let you go, the Maths Appeal podcast, is it something we should all download and listen to?
So to be honest, it is a podcast aimed more for teachers, but it's something for anyone that ever thought maths wasn't their thing. I know, James, we've had conversations at many events where you're a man that can do maths and numbers and finance, but a lot of our listeners who might be literates or historians think that they can't do maths. But actually, maths is in our everyday life, whether you're planning your budgeting for Christmas or you're checking out the league tables to see if your team's going to get relegated, or whether you're looking at the charts and seeing Taylor Swift reach number one again.
Bobby, I am going to send you and your maths in to go and see Rachel from accounts, because it's very clear that she hasn't got a Scooby-Doo.
I'll help Rachel out anytime.
Well, she could do with all the help she can get. Bobby Seagull, maths teacher and host of the Maths Appeal podcast. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk, where we turn our attention back to that economy. Why is the UK's economy struggling? Steve is in Norfolk. Hello, Steve.
Hello, James. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, thank you. Perhaps you'd like to tell me how you or why you think the UK's economy is struggling.
Just to put it in simplistic terms, at the end of the day, when you keep taxing businesses with national insurance and minimum wage rises and also the employment law, that is not helping anyone, especially with the cost of energy. How can any business compete? What we should be doing is fracking oil and gas straight away.
Oh, but hang on a second. Ed Miliband says no, we can't do that, and we need to make ourselves green and resilient and use our renewable energy. And he doesn't seem to care that we have wonderful natural resources that you could either frack for, that you could use the nuclear industry and get that back on keel. Alternatively, as you say, go and drill for oil and gas. He doesn't like it.
Well, at the end of the day, someone's got to educate them. You know, we've got all these natural resources, yet we're important. We're closing down a coal-powered fire station when we've got coal fields. We need a quick injection to kickstart the economy. And if you've got cheap energy, we can be more competitive. They're closing down steel furnaces. How are we going to produce steel? We have to import it from the likes of China and Denmark. All the wind farms going up, they require steel. You know, it all boils down to energy at the end of the day.
I think that's a very good point, in that if we don't have a cheap and sustainable source of cheap energy, and we should be using every means possible. Steve in Norfolk, thank you for that. Let's go to Ken, who's in Kent. Ken, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You know, I've been on therapy since you've been off a talk in the morning. It's cost me an absolute fortune.
Yeah, no, you and me both, Ken. I've
had to get a hobby. It's called Spot a Tory MP with Empathy. I ain't found one yet.
Oh, right, OK. I mean, to be fair, you know, it was 7 years that I was doing that show, Ken, so I think everybody needed a rest. But it's, you know, it's nice to be back on, I was going to say daylight hours, but it's pitch black out there.
Now, it's nice to be back to talk to Ken, you could have said. That would have been a nice...
oh, sorry. Hang on a second. Yeah, no, it's really nice to be back, because now I can talk to Ken in Kent, and that's always a joy, and it's never a pleasure. No, always a pleasure. But, of course, the thing is, Ken, I'm on today and tomorrow and Friday and all next week.
Oh, you missed Christmas Day then? Oh.
I know.
They give you a day off.
they do give me a day off. So I've got an opportunity to go and use a house that has no hot water. So that'll be fun.
Anyway, let's talk about wonderful Labour. On the 13th of December, just recently, they published a National Planning Policy Framework. You know what that means, James?
Yes.
For assumption across the whole country, we're going to build. Whoopee! That means my site's probably going to be worth about 30 million. Great news! What a Christmas present!
Well, if it does turn out to be worth that much, I look forward to receiving some charitable donations from you, Ken, to the various organisations that I.
I tell you what, I give out loads of charitable money down here. You ought to come down here. I put homeless people up in hotels. I save schools from closure.
Hang on, that's what the government does with all our money as well. They keep bringing people and sticking them in hotels as well.
If you've got it, you've got to spread it. And this government haven't got what it had because the Tories sold all our assets off. I mean,
okay, let's not go back. Let's not go back that far. Why is the UK's economy struggling though? Because what we've seen is
Germany struggling. Why is Italy struggling? Why is French economy struggling? I mean, let's get real here. I mean, at the end of the day, if you think for 1 minute that we're going to do some kind of deal with the man that believes that everybody's eating dogs and cats for a living in America, then I think you're all on another planet. I mean, at the end of the day, when we needed the USA after the Second World War, I know we're going to go back on history, where were they? It took a bloody attack on Pearl Harbor to wake them up. So if you think that they're going to come flying over here and rescue the UK... get over it. Ain't gonna happen.
Oh, and he's gone. There we go, Ken. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Very good to chat, as always. That's Ken in Kent. If you want to join the conversation, you can do so. Tell me why you think the UK's economy is struggling. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Meanwhile, next, fasten your seatbelts. Oh, we're going to be talking Christmas and food with the legend that is Mark Wogan.
What do you think Labour has actually done well?
So far in government, I think what they've done is they've turned around the country economically to a different position, a different way of doing things. Ultimately, they've made difficult
downwards?
decisions that even I disagree with.
The economy is worse now than it was when Labour took over.
Right now, yeah, we're talking 5.5 months in.
But you just told me they've done a brilliant job with the economy.
About a long-term...
Hang on a minute, you just said what Labour did well was the economy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is 8 minutes to 6 o'clock this Monday, the 23rd of December. Drive with me, James Max, till 7 o'clock here on Talk, where we need to turn ourselves away from the UK economy. Yes, we'll take some more of your calls on why the UK economy is struggling in a few moments' time. 0344 499 1000, by the way, to have a conversation. However, it probably won't have escaped your attention that it's a little bit festive out there. Alternatively, if you've been shopping today, it's crackers crazy. We're only a couple of days away from Christmas, so I think we need to talk festive food. Who better than Mark Wogan? He's the host of the Spooning podcast. I'm yet to be a guest. And also co-founder of Home Slice Pizza. So he actually has a business and knows how to run a restaurant and a business. Mark, good afternoon.
Allegedly, yes.
Allegedly, yes.
Good to see you, James.
Nice to see you too.
You left out one thing there.
What's that?
What about Grumpy Old Men that you and I have done
well, I was going to mention
of
that.
times
Well,
together?
indeed. And in fact, the festive edition is
quite something, is it
It is quite something. So I think it's... I don't... Oh, look!
What?
We're on Christmas Day!
It's on your Please Promote page. Excellent.
Yes, it is. So, at between 12:30 and 1 o'clock on Christmas Day,
That's
on Talk.
That's in the afternoon, not in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, you know, we're just after Gaffs of the Year and just before James Whale Unwrapped.
Does he get unwrapped?
Clearly.
Okay.
Grumpy Old Men Christmas Special.
Can I just say, I hot-footed it here from the West End.
Oh, hang on, no.
Oh, no, what?
Whoa, no, we're back again.
Oh, are we?
Because apparently we're back at 8:30, if you missed it, on Christmas Day.
And we've just got the Christmas special out of Spooning
yes.
with our friend Ewan and Ewan Venters and Jimmy Carr.
So didn't you do them last time?
No, we literally put the same one out again.
Oh, right. Because I
it's
like
hard
those
to top
two.
that kind of Christmas special.
So, Ewan Venters,
Yes.
You've mentioned his name. He used to be chief executive of Fortnum & Mason.
Yes.
And then recently he's been in charge of Art Farm and doing all sorts of restaurants.
Yes.
And who knows what he's going to be doing in 2025. We're kind of looking
He's
forward.
an extraordinary man.
Amazing. Very
nothing,
well connected.
Nothing holds him back.
No. So he's extremely well connected. And apparently Jimmy Carr, a comedian or something?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, funny guy.
Yeah. So Jimmy was one of the few people I met who was an Apprentice superfan.
Oh.
Yes. He said I should have won.
Well.
Anyway, let's talk Christmas. I read that Gen Z have been shunning traditional Christmas dinner. I mean, then we should shun Gen Z. They don't want turkeys. They want to eat duck or nut roasts.
No, I don't want that.
Yorkshire pudding sales have gone up 142%. Yorkshire puddings shouldn't be going with a Christmas lunch.
No.
What's wrong with people?
No. I mean, look, a turkey is a pain.
I'm sorry?
A turkey is a pain to cook well.
No, they're not. They're easy.
To cook well, I mean, anyone can cook it, but what does it taste like? I mean, you know, because you'll have cardboard insides and rubbery legs and all that kind of...
If you don't cook it well... But if you cook it long and slow, and if you think about it, if you let it rest, if you do the Nigella recipes and a bit of zhuzhing... my turkey, because I did early Christmas back in October.
That is quite early, James.
Yeah, it is, but it gets rid of all
always
the old
ahead
stuff.
Of the curve. Always ahead of the curve.
And I'm sure I'll do some more. But you just, if you baste it right and you cook it right, it's lovely. Turkey's a lovely meat, lovely and moist.
Do you know what the key is?
What's that?
A beer-based brine.
I'm sorry?
A beer-based brine.
Oh, I can feel a top tip coming on.
Yes. So you brine your bird. So today is the perfect day to do it.
Oh, get your big old bird. Because nobody likes a dry old bird.
No. And same amount of sugar as there is to salt.
Yes.
So say 150 grams of each.
Yes.
Right. Big pot, pour the water in.
Yes.
Bring it up to the boil.
Yes.
Orange rind, lemon rind, peppercorns, bay leaf, and 2 bottles of blonde Belgian beer.
Right.
Let it go cold.
Yes.
Drop your bird in that, leave it in there for 24 hours. That bird, when you take it out, dry it off, oil it, salt it, roast it. Super succulent.
Right. And then that sort of briny stuff, you just throw that away after you've done all that?
It's got some beer in it. If you're desperate, you could drink it. It depends how boring Nana is.
Oh, wow. OK, any other top tips? I mean, are you a Christmas pudding fan?
I'm not. It's quite good. I'll tell you what I do like to do with Christmas pudding is with the leftovers.
I like to eat it.
Is make a Christmas pudding ice cream.
Oh, yes, nice.
That's very nice.
That is very nice. You see, I like a Christmas pudding, but I'm quite discerning. Christmas pudding, if you want a good supermarket one, M&S. If you want a good one, like overall good one, the best one, and I'm not saying it because it used to be there, Fortnum and Mason is the best Christmas pudding of all.
It is.
Don't go cheap. All the cheap ones are not
King
nice.
George one, haven't they?
Yes, that's beautiful.
Yeah. It's a good pud.
It's a very, very
good pud.
If you don't like Christmas pudding, what's a good alternative?
I like a Yule log.
Wow.
Well, it's basically a chocolate roulade, isn't it?
Oh, I like a chocolate roulade.
Who doesn't like a chocolate roulade?
Yeah.
Or one of my wife's cheesecakes.
Oh.
She does a beautiful Basque cheesecake.
Okay, I don't think that's going to be available for all.
Seasonally, well, it is available if you're in Marlow at the Meat Hook Butcher. You can go and get some there. That's where she sells them. However,
yes,
she's done a Christmas version with Baileys in it.
Baileys seems to be everywhere at the moment.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. Well, I mean, look, milk substitutes are all the rage, aren't they?
Yes.
So, I mean, in the morning...
hang on a second, you used Baileys on Crunchy Nut cornflakes.
Not me personally, that was Jimmy Carr's Christmas breakfast. It was Crunchy Nut cornflakes with Baileys instead of milk.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like an interesting idea.
Well, I mean, give it a try.
Well, I suppose so. Finally, top tip for making sure that sprouts aren't horrific.
Well, I'm doing a different method this year.
Oh, yeah.
So, pre-cook the sprouts.
Yes.
Blanch them in very cold water so they don't go brown. Iced water so they don't go that sort of greeny brown. Press them flat on a baking tray.
Yes.
Sprinkle with some chopped up chorizo, bit of oil.
Yes.
Salt, pepper. Press another one baking tray on top of it.
Yes.
And roast it in the oven for 20 minutes and then cut it into squares. And lovely, crispy, smoked paprika, delicious.
Well, as everybody knows, I will be hosting Drive on Friday, so I'm going to be finding out whether or not you tried Mark's recipe with the sprouts. Yes. Meanwhile, if people want to find Spooning, look for the Spooning podcast. There are some fantastic conversations
Spooning with
there.
Mark Wogan, available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube.
Alternatively, go and find him for a home sliced pizza, which are delicious. I can tell you from experience. There we go. That's Mark Wogan. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We turn our conversation to the big stories of the day. Andy Williams is going to be joining me live in the studio. That's next on Talk.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. Shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in or far ball. Slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the process, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
Oh my
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public is not being told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It's just gone 2 minutes past 6 o'clock. It's me, James Max, with you till 7 o'clock this Monday afternoon with your drive time show here on Talk. Still plenty to come. We'll be turning our attention to the traffic and the travel to try and work your way through not only the problems today, but also the things that you should be looking out for. And also, I think we're going to have some decluttering advice. I don't know about you, but my house is just stuffed to the gunnels full of toot. And that's before Christmas Day, so we might need to do some toot clearance. Also, something I haven't asked, but maybe if you can help me get my hot water working, that would be nice. Oh, heading into Christmas without any hot water. Oy. Oh, the boiler traumas over the last few days. Not talking about the other half either. The boiler traumas, seriously. Anyway, enough of my nonsense. We're still going to be continuing our conversation of why the UK's economy is struggling and indeed taking your calls. It's 0344 499 1000. Plus, we're going to be going through the big stories of the day with Andy Williams, political commentator. So that's all coming up on Drive Time on Talk. So, as I said, if you want to give me a call, you can do so. It's 0344 499 1000. Why is the UK's economy struggling? On the front page of the Daily Mail, economy is heading for the worst of all worlds, they said this morning. Businesses sound recession warning for start of 2025 and blame Labour's budget as they slash output and jobs whilst increasing prices. I mean, even the Labour Party minister that they did manage to put up described the situation as disappointing. Economic outlook is frustrating, says Labour. How can you be frustrated by something that you caused? Would be my response. That's on the front page of today's Times newspaper. So it's kind of all around. And inevitably, those right-leaning press will take a pop shot at Labour and say, it's all your fault. And inevitably, Labour will look at it and go, oh, no, after 14 years of Tory rule, we had to take some difficult decisions. You didn't have to take those decisions, Rachel from Accounts. You couldn't have made worse decisions if you tried. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Why is the UK's economy struggling? We'll come to your calls a little bit later on. Meanwhile, let's turn to Andy Williams, political commentator. Joins me live in the studio. Andy.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
What the hell are you doing?
It's an Andy Williams song.
Oh, I see. Oh, right.
It's Andy Williams' iconic Christmas song. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Great.
So the royalties are positively flooding in. And
it's
producer Chris and producer Dave think it's very easy.
Oh dear. Well, Dave, the tech op, is absolutely hilarious. I'd forgotten how hilarious he is because he was my tech op for many years on Early Breakfast.
Indeed.
And I'd forgotten how entertaining he is and what a creative individual. Meanwhile, you're in the studio.
Yes.
You must be irritated because Labour have made every single possible mistake they could have made. They've lost 19 points of support since they were elected. They did have a big job to do. They've talked a big game. They say they want to grow the economy. In my opinion, taking away the politics of it, if you can, you want to grow the economy, but they seem, from all my political and economic teaching, they seem not to have done anything that will grow the economy.
So I think the single biggest mistake by a long way that they've made is the change to employer national insurance, the increase in employer national insurance, because that is going, well, I say is, I mean, we know anecdotally, and I think that is going to bleed through into the numbers quite quickly, that employers are going to stop hiring, put the brakes on hiring, in some cases cut jobs, and that is ultimately going to affect people.
But I don't understand why they also did this, because there are so many organisations that Labour, you might have thought, would be wishing to support up and down the country. So, whether it be sporting clubs, whether it be health and care institutions who are already buckling, whether it be local authorities who are buckling, charities who are desperately seeking extra revenue from donations, more of those donations will be going in tax. So, in effect, you're putting up people's tax bills by stealth, because more of the money that you give to those charities will be going on running those charities. To my mind, it's nonsensical. I can understand ideologically why you might want to increase the tax burden. I can understand ideologically why you might want to stick it to the previous lot. But what it seems to have done, politically speaking, it has confirmed to the people who didn't vote Labour last time that they're definitely not doing it next time. And it is also confirmed to the people who didn't vote Conservatives because they were furious with them that they're probably going to have to find another home politically, because the Conservatives aren't doing it either. That you have a look at what Kemi Badenoch has been talking about. The best thing that she managed to do for publicity was to go and speak to Jeremy Clarkson. Everything else, I haven't seen sight nor sound of her, not a policy in sight. She hasn't got a Scooby-Doo. It's University Politics Debating Society. The two major parties should be leading by example and with policy, and neither of them are doing it.
Well, I mean, firstly, on Kemi Badenoch, her interview on the Today programme this morning, if anyone heard, it was absolutely dreadful. I mean, for the leader of one of the two biggest parties in the country, she had no idea, no plan. I don't expect her to have a plan. I just expect her to speak in some sort of, like, basically coherent way. She was talking, I mean, University Debating Society is exactly it, just talking utter nonsense. And actually, and I know this is depressing for people, but the silver lining for Labour is that the Tories are in such a state, which kind of brings us to Reform, the elephant in the room, who are polling sort of on the shoulder of the Tories.
They're on the shoulder. I think they're ahead of the Tories, and I think they're 2 points behind Labour. It would not surprise me if, in terms of support or otherwise, if Reform become the biggest opponent to Labour, simply because they do have some very straightforward policies that resonate. The first is, if you want to take people out of poverty, take them out of the tax system. We should, if you have this national living wage and all this sort of business, we shouldn't be sort of taking with one hand, giving with the other, and putting... Every time you take money away from somebody through a tax and then give it back to them through some kind of credit or otherwise, you are costing us, the taxpayers, money, because you could fire thousands, if not tens of thousands, of useless civil servants shuffling a money around by taking it with one hand and then giving it back with the other. Because every time you do that, it's like you're paying stamp duty on a home. You're taking away capital out the system. Stop it. Don't take it in the first place, and then you don't have to give it back later on.
All of which I agree with. So then how are Reform going to pay for nationalising the water companies, nationalising the steel industry, which they seem to be making noises about? How are they going to pay for the huge gap that will be left by having
because
zero?
I don't agree with either of those policies.
Right, exactly. But this is the point: is they are a populist party with populist policies without sophisticated, thoughtful answers. Thought does not come into the equation for the Reform Party.
Well, you may say that, but I think there's more thought than the other two.
Well, I don't agree with that.
How can you... Is there any thought that's gone into Labour's policies?
Yes, you may agree or disagree. But
so
absolutely,
hang on a second. So where is the thought? So you've got Angela Rayner saying 300,000 homes a year.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen.
Okay. Yeah. So where's the thought in that then?
Well, I don't think they should. I mean, we could talk all day.
They've published new plans that they want for the planning system that make no sense. They clearly have not spoken to anybody who understands how real estate works and what the real issues behind our housing issue are. They're not addressing... You talked about elephants in the room. The elephant in the room is the 8 million extra people who are in this country who have arrived here in the last 15 years that we're not catering for and we haven't accounted for in our numbers. If you're going to have extra people in this country, you've got to have extra funds for the central resources. No one's done it.
Well, and the infrastructure as well,
and you've got to stop the 900,000 net people who are coming every year. You've got to deal with the small boats. They haven't done anything. They're useless bunch of cretins.
You're talking about Tories and Labour, correct?
Well, I'm talking... Well, listen...
Because the 900,000's got nothing to do with the Labour Party.
Well, it has, because the Labour Party hasn't done anything to stop it. And I totally agree.
Hasn't had a chance. Hasn't had an opportunity.
How long do we give them? They gave Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng 54 days or whatever it was.
Well, 54 days too long. 5 months is not long enough to bring net migration of 900,000 down to zero.
Sure, but 5 months is long enough to take the wrong decisions to point the economy in a direction that is not going to be pleasant in 6 months' time. So inflation is now going up. Why? Because of the policies that Labour put in place. This is no longer a blame the Tories. You can blame the Tories for the debt. You can blame the Tories for waste. You can blame the Tories for all sorts of terrible decisions. And in fact, in my view, reducing the wrong taxes, but you can't blame the Tories for the fact that the economy is now stagnating. When Keir Starmer came to power, gloom, doom, he talked us into the recession that we're now going to see.
So
partly.
I definitely think there is an aspect of that. But if you look at these if you look at these Q3 figures that came out today, who were in government at the start of Q3? The Tories.
I agree.
Right?
I have no fan.
So there will be people out there, I know there are, because I've heard them today and they've been in my Twitter mentions and all that stuff, going, oh, well, Q3, as soon as Labour come to power, Q3 figures, zero growth. What on earth are you talking about? How economically illiterate can you possibly be?
Yeah, but all you have to do is look at the direction of the growth. And in fact, what you're seeing is a deteriorating position, that they have done nothing to assist. And I think, look, did the Conservatives call the election at the right time? No. Did they make the right calls on the way into the election? No. I mean, their policies were horrendous, but I think that they're slightly less painful and less stupid than the Labour policies. But there we go. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about Yvette Cooper. I mean, confronted by a constituent, so she's handing out mince pies. Does she think she's going to get an easy ride when we've got... Our shops are being burgled, as are our homes, on a daily basis. I mean, somehow, some significant action. She's talked tough words, and she's very happy to meter out the justice when it comes to rioting on our streets. Good, well done.
Rightly so.
But where is the policing? Just to say, we are going to have a shop blitz. We are going to make sure that there are police on every single high street during the Christmas period. We are not going to see stuff nicked from our stores until it stops.
Are we talking about shoplifting, immigration or mince pies?
We're talking about why it is that people are complaining. When she's handing out mince pies, people are complaining at her.
Yes.
They're complaining at her because they're saying that stuff is being stolen, she hasn't done enough, and they're complaining that too many people are arriving in the country because she hasn't done enough.
Well, so on the immigration point, she's obviously not had long enough to deal with that properly yet, because it's a complicated problem, a very, very complicated problem that will take a long time to resolve.
Let's see what happened on this mince pie clip thing, so we know what we're talking about.
I'm just shocked seeing you and Natalie. And give mince pies out to people. For what reason?
We do it every Christmas. Well, would you like one?
No.
All right.
No, I hope you're not going to win next time. I hope you're out next time. I really do.
Everybody's got different views, haven't they? But it is Christmas time. It is Christmas.
It is. You've betrayed everything that everybody voted for you for, in everything. Well, smashing gang, load of rubbish, you know it, and you're going to house a load of them around here. We know you are. We know your plans.
Well, actually, do you know we're already...
Waspy.
Yeah, we are already cutting the asylum hotels.
What about when you got that photo done and all that with Waspy women?
Yeah, we are already...
You changed your mind with that.
We are already cutting the asylum hotels.
You know, you've got more.
No, we've actually been cutting them.
Cut Rwanda, you cut everything. This is a joke. And now you're going to try and stop Heale on donating. Everything's like changing. That is so two-faced. Getting a mince pie out.
Yeah. It's a nice tradition.
No. Give him a blanket because they're freezing to death.
Well, I mean, who comes out of that better? Very obviously Yvette Cooper. What an uncharitable, miserable shopper that was.
Well,
at Christmas.
Possibly.
I mean, grow up.
I have to say, I was almost beginning to feel a little bit sorry for Yvette Cooper there. But look, I think the point about this clip is less about what the arguments were and the fact that I think people up and down the country are genuinely angry at Labour because the policies that were placed before them and the aspirations that were set out are not what Labour have put in place since. So, for example, economic growth, we can all get behind that. The shambles of the previous government, we can all get behind that. But Labour indicated freebie central. They should have used their judgment, but they didn't. They should have used judgment. When it came to the budget, there are things they could have done, either to raise tax or to raise more money or to increase efficiencies and various things, none of which they did on the way in. And that means that when people see what they actually do in power, as opposed to what they said they were going to do, I think that anger up and down the country is palpable. And poorly expressed perhaps, and uncharitable may be, but that discontent by that individual, I think is being replicated up and down this country because they've seen the decisions that have been taken by this government have not been right.
I understand that, and I do accept that there are certain things that were promised or said that have not been delivered on, but I think we have to look at this in the fullness of time. We're only 5 months into this government.
Yes, now, I can tell you for no, you know, without waiting, that you've already said national insurance, the impact of that is going to be horrific.
I agree.
And also, for example, VAT on school fees. I get it. I understand that some people don't like fee-paying schools. I totally understand. I personally take the view that VAT should never be applied to any educational establishment as set out in law. And if people and parents want to choose where to send their child to be educated, they should be able to do so. But punishing people like this for an ideological reason, then to say, oh, yes, it's going to raise us money and we're going to be allowed to, you know, pay for more teachers. No. It's going to cost the system more. To my mind, it's the ideology, like we must do this, over the reality, which is this is going to cost us more to do it, and actually you're taking away parental choice.
So I think we've seen some worrying signs of that around changes to the academy and free school system, for example, which is about the only success that the Tories had in their 14 years in government. I mean, literally the only success. And it looks like Labour are going to dismantle part of that, and that seems silly to me. The school fees thing, I think, on balance, is the right thing to do.
Why?
The winter... because I think it's an exception.
So it costs more?
It's closing a... Well, no.
It's not a loophole.
It is a loophole.
No, education has always been tax-free. It should never have VAT applied to it.
Let's see whether it does or doesn't.
No. It's been in legislation for hundreds of years that education has never attracted tax. It should always be tax-free. So it's not a loophole. To say it's a loophole is misunderstanding and misrepresenting what education provides and the opportunity there. And if you're saying to me, oh, well, it's exclusive, it's not exclusive. Any single person can get hold of that high-quality education. If you want to get rid of it, you increase the quality of our schools.
I don't. I've nothing against private education. I think parents should be well within their rights to send their kids to private schools.
So why is it a loophole?
Because almost every other service of that ilk attracts
No, it
VAT.
doesn't. Education does not attract VAT, full stop.
No, I said almost every other service of that ilk.
Well, then it doesn't, so it's not a loophole. You're talking nonsense.
OK, well, we'll agree to disagree.
No, we won't agree to disagree.
I think
you're wrong. When you say agree to disagree, it means that you're on the run.
I think that's an unbalanced, difficult decision.
James Max 1, Andy Williams 0.
What about the waspy women? The least deserving campaign group in British history.
I'm sorry?
£10 billion saved there by the Labour government. Thank you very much.
If you didn't agree with it, then you should never have stood on platforms saying that you agreed with it.
I've always disagreed with it. I think it's ludicrous.
I mean, I think it's ludicrous that when you've got people...
Turn your TV on, open your post, grow up, sort yourselves out.
No, but it's worse than that.
Listen, people on the right talk about personal responsibility all the time, and when it comes to 60-year-olds, it all changes. Personal responsibility out the window. The waspy women go away, had enough, fed up with them.
I've never understood
delighted by that.
Why it is that people arguing for equality have not accepted that retirement ages need to be the same.
Right.
How it was done by both governments, I think, was not helpful.
But over a quarter of a century.
Yeah, but I think the way that it was done was... But if you say that, oh, well, I didn't know, then I think that's you know, that's...
Which is their major argument.
Horse plops. I was about to use another word that would have me... that would have had me taken off air. So there you go. If it's terrible news or anything else, or if it's rubbish, it's horse plops. Anyway, we'll have some more horse plops with Andy Williams in just a moment here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
So, very good evening to you. 24 minutes past 6 o'clock is the time. This is Drive with me, James Max, here on Talk with you till 7 o'clock. Today, tomorrow and Friday, bit of drive time excitement. Meanwhile, turning our attention back to those stories which are in the news. Andy Williams, political commentator, is still in the studio with me. He's still reeling from the term horseplops. Now, if you, which I think describes his government and their policies very well and effectively. If you want to join the conversation, do give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. Why is the UK's economy struggling is what we've been asking this afternoon. But also, if you want to talk about your situation, if you want to talk about policies which have taken place, you can do so. Meanwhile, you can also send me a voice note if you like. 0344 499 1000. I know it's the same as the telephone number. You just send a WhatsApp message like Anna in Surrey.
Evening, Anna, Surrey. Can you please send Andy back to college? He needs to study politics at sixth form level. Andy, Labour have destroyed our country in 5 short months. It was already teetering. Labour just finished it off. And as for reform not having any good policies, read their manifesto. Their policies are amazing. And quite frankly, I don't care if they take us back to the Stone Ages. They're getting my vote. I don't want any more Tory, and I certainly do not want any more Starmer. And I probably reflect the views of the majority of this country. Go back to college, Andy, or better still, go back into your house and stay there. Don't think about politics anymore. Bye-bye.
I wasn't quite sure that Anna was clear in getting off the fence there in any... That was very clear. Anna, thank you very much indeed for that. She's got a point.
No, she doesn't. Anna's policy is, I don't care if we go back to the Stone Ages. I mean, I think that speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Well, I think what she's saying is that looking at the Labour policies, and I think this, they've only been in for 5 months, and look at this. I'm sorry, they've taken decisions already, which you and I have highlighted some that you've had to, you know, reluctantly agree with.
No, not reluctantly. I accept. I'm one of those balanced people who turn up on this station. I'm always honest when Labour do something rubbish. Anna comes on and says we should go back to the Stone Ages, and we should go back to college. Well, wait, I've got a degree in politics, philosophy and economics, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, I'll get your money back if I were you.
Come on.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm just not sure how much understanding there is there. Anyway, let's talk about other things. Lord Mandelson, brilliant choice to bring the 71-year-old back into politics and shove him over, you know, as UNES ambassador, getting some lovely air miles.
I think it's a fine choice. I don't think it's necessarily the best choice. He's probably...
Despite what he said about...
Well,
Trump?
You know, list as long as your arm of people who criticise Trump, including Trump's actual vice president. So it's actually quite difficult to find people who haven't criticised Trump because there's very good reason to. Everything that Mandelson said about him is absolutely correct. And, you know, my concern about Mandelson is he's always in it for Mandelson, but the upside is he's a very skilled politician, he's a skilled negotiator, he was EU Trade Commissioner for a very long time, so he has experience in this area, and actually he's extremely well connected. So I think, on balance, probably not a bad call, but the concern is it's the Mandelson show.
I mean, he's had an interesting time. I mean, either he's extremely brilliant on the basis that he's been out not once but twice, and he's had more comebacks than... I don't know, somebody who's had a lot of comebacks. And I understand the expertise that is there, but I also would see it is sort of harking back to sort of previous Labour times, and I just wonder whether that was the right or a wise decision, particularly given how turbulent perhaps politics is going to be over in the US. You kind of perhaps needed to pick somebody, and maybe Keir Starmer could have almost surprised everybody and surprised us by picking somebody who might have been, you know, a Tory in the past, or, you know, a surprising choice, as Tony Blair made some quite surprising choices during his appointment to basically say best person for the job. I just think that unless you pick somebody who is absolutely in, you know, Trump's orbit, you ain't getting anywhere.
Yeah, and I think Mandelson is extremely well connected in DC. Is he the most well-connected person? I don't know. I don't think this should be a party political appointment. Obviously, all of your listeners, I'm sure Anna's saying, well, it should be Nigel Farage. I mean, come on. Nigel Farage's MO is to undermine this government, right? So
I don't necessarily see that as a practical viewpoint. But
well, lots of people do. Lots of people do.
They might do, but I would say that for Nigel Farage, he's probably better off just ploughing his own furrow and then making sure that as and when, there's availability there, he can do so. I was going to do a sneeze, but I managed to avoid it. Now, 16 and 17... Horse props. That's a completely different... Right to vote, 16 and 17-year-olds. Good idea?
No.
No. Terrible idea. OK, good. I'm glad we sorted that. Archbishop of York, twice reappointed priest in sexual abuse case, report says. And this is... I find it astonishing that the Archbishop of York can stay in post. In any workplace, had they committed such a sort of atrocious sort of failure of judgment, they'd be out.
Yeah, agreed. I just think the lack of contrition, the lack of accountability, the straightforward lack of safeguarding and process in place throughout the Church of England just tells its own story, and it's really, really shocking. And I think, Ian Hislop sort of went a bit viral for confronting the Archbishop or the ex-Archbishop of Canterbury after he resigned for lacking humility in the wake of his resignation. I think that was absolutely right.
A couple of messages coming in before I let you go.
Oh,
James, what a Christmas treat. I missed your regular show. Loads. Me too. Just wanted to say, Starmer disaster doesn't get anywhere close. Let's give Kemi a chance. At least she's thinking beyond the same old Tories. Farage, how many parties has he started and left again? Interesting. Donna in Birmingham says, good evening, James. How dare! I love it when somebody says, how dare! And guess who the two words after how dare?
Andy Williams?
Correct. Saying that lady tackling Yvette Cooper on passing mince pies and taking her to task as not being in the Christmas spirit. Perhaps you should have played him the lady crying on Peter Cardwell's show, saying that she's going to be freezing the winter. So there you go. Ted says, James, winter fuel allowance. The Labour Party carried out a risk assessment on this 2 years back when it was hinted the Tories would stop it. Keir Starmer said thousands of pensioners would die if this was stopped. So in that respect, the Labour Party, through negligence, should be liable to be prosecuted for corporate manslaughter if just one dies. OK.
Don't think I'm going to bother with that one.
Well, Ted makes a good point, which is Labour said one thing in opposition, and then when it came to it, then they just took it away.
Yeah, but then we ended up with corporate manslaughter.
Yeah. Julie says, good evening, James. I would like to say, well said, Anna. Andy, go back to your college. I totally agree with you, Anna. The Tories wrecked the country, and the Labour Party has put it in a coffin.
This is fictional college that I'd love to know where people think...
Where did you study your degree?
Between 2009 and 12.
No, not when, where?
Manchester, University of Manchester.
Oh, well, that high esteemed form of higher education.
Well, absolutely is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well done, you.
We can't all go to Oxford.
No, I didn't go. I was rejected from Cambridge by a woman on a chaise longue. She said I was a doer, not a reader. When I rang my mum and told her that, and I said, what does that mean? She said, you're applying to a different university. Anyway, that was the end of that little story. Now, Andy, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm assuming you're off for a Christmas fandango somewhere.
Absolutely. I'm going to go and have a lefty, liberal, woke-alicious Christmas, eat some tofu, you know...
You're not a vegetarian, are you?
Sorry? No, of course I'm not.
Are you eating turkey?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
OK, good. Well, you enjoy doing that.
Thank
and I dare say we'll have some more jousting in the new year.
I hope so.
If I'm allowed back. So there we go.
Likewise.
After that performance, I'll be surprised. There we go. That's Andy Williams, political commentator. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk, where next we're going to be turning our attention to the travel. You want to make sure that you're listening to this because we've got the one, the only Simon Calder. That's coming up next. Oh, and your calls.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
6:35 is the time. It's me, James Max, for the Drive Time Show here on Talk this Monday, the 23rd of December. And with it being the 23rd of December, funnily enough, you might be wanting to travel somewhere over the next couple of days. Maybe you don't want to be. There's only one person we can speak to find out exactly what's happening, and he's already poised like a gazelle at Waterloo Station. It's Simon Calder, travel correspondent for The Independent. Joins me now. Simon, good evening.
James, great to talk to you. I'm here at Waterloo Station, which is phenomenally busy. Lots of people, I think, have been out doing some Christmas shopping. Might be even a few commuters who've done a decent day of work here. And yet more people pouring off trains from southwest London, Surrey and Hampshire to go out for the evening in London. I chose Waterloo to talk to you because it's actually the location for the longest, most protracted bit of engineering works. This is actually closing the main Southwestern Railways line from London via Woking and Basingstoke down to Southampton. The bit between Woking and Basingstoke, there's going to be a test at the end, so pay attention, is out of action because it's being redone. So therefore, if you want to go, say, to lovely Southampton, you're going to be getting on a train going down almost as far as Portsmouth to a place called Havant, doing a right turn there, heading up to Southampton the long way round, adding at least 40 minutes to your journey. But at least you know about that, as opposed to the thousands of people hoping to travel between Dover, Folkestone and London today who didn't know that there was going to be a fire involving signalling cable and that would put paid to their travel plans. So a mix of expected disruption and new disruption.
OK, so just in terms of other disruption, I'm assuming there are quite a lot of other lines which are seeing planned engineering works between Christmas and New Year, all sorts of things, and stations I've seen which are closed. So I'm assuming that if you are planning to travel on the trains, just make sure that you look ahead. And also, given that we've got much better information now that you can get on apps and all that sort of thing, look at it before you go to the station and before you get, angry or whatever it is, because something's been either cancelled or is delayed.
Certainly that's well worth doing, but let me just take you forward 24 hours from now, James. That is when an awful lot of trains will start their last runs. Some of them may even be in the depot already because against what happens in continental Europe, we decide no trains whatsoever on Christmas Day. There will be a few running on Boxing Day from London Victoria to Gatwick and Brighton, for instance. Quite a lot of them around Merseyside, and actually a pretty good service in Scotland, certainly in the Glasgow area going across to Edinburgh. But everywhere else, things will start up again on Friday the 27th, except where they don't. And where they don't are going to be Britain's two busiest rail stations. That's London Liverpool Street serving East Anglia and London Paddington serving the west of England and South Wales. Both of those are closing from end of play tomorrow. Paddington will reopen on the 30th of December. Liverpool Street, not till the 2nd of January. So make the most of those trains while you can. You've got 24 hours left.
So I'm assuming if you try to go to East Anglia or anything else, is it the whole of the lines which are closed or just Liverpool Street Station?
Yeah, you'll still be able to travel, for example, from Norwich and Ipswich and Stansted Airport towards London, but there may be bus replacement services involved. And in terms of Stansted Airport, it's just going to be a shuttle train running to and from a station called Tottenham Heale, which is on the underground, so you'll be able to get there. And west of England and South Wales, some really interesting things happening there. What they are doing is actually running some trains from Penzance, from Swansea, round through to London Euston, which sounds completely wrong for those of us who know our London terminals, but they found a way of getting it from Reading. And thing is, it's going to add an hour to journeys. There aren't going to be as many trains. They will be more crowded.
OK, you're telling us, Simon, we just don't bother. OK, so we turn our attention to the roads. Are they going to be any better, or is it going to be a complete and utter mess? When's the worst time to travel, or has it now passed?
Well, now isn't a great time. Well, now is actually getting slightly better. Unfortunately, we've still got a number of people commuting by road. They will be listening to you right now. They're mingling with people doing last-minute shopping trips and, of course, people beginning the great getaway. Actually, now is a good time to start your journey if you need to get somewhere, or get up very early and make it by 11s tomorrow. It's going to be the middle of the day, according to the motoring organisations, when we're going to see the big surge of departures, roughly from 11 till 5 or 6. So go before or go afterwards. And by the way, if you're going to get in the car and drive to a port to take you across to the island of Ireland, that's looking tricky because of the closure of the port of Holyhead, which is the main link across to Dublin. And they're actually putting on an extra sailing at 11:30 at night on Christmas Eve between Belfast and Cairnryan. That's being put on because there's so many people still on the wrong side of the Irish Sea and wanting to get across where they need to be on Christmas Day.
OK, just finally to you, Simon. I'm sure that lots of people will be leaving the country, going to snowy climes, where I know the snow has been excellent. It's still snowing quite a lot, but the weather improves, certainly across the Alps in a few days' time. That should be pretty amazing. Or indeed to sunnier climes. If you had to go somewhere really sunny or really nice now, where would you be hopping on a plane if you just thought, I've had enough, I've got to change my plans, I've just got to get out the country, Starmer's ruined it? Where would you go?
Would be hopping on a plane to Lanzarote, because I know for a fact there's a number of departures tomorrow which are looking extremely reasonable, about £100 return coming back on New Year's Eve. Now the thing is that the catch is that accommodation is in such short supply on the island that that could cost you many hundreds of pounds to find a proper holiday there. But thing is, why not a Canary Islands camping holiday? Are you joining me, James?
Oh, I think I was busy. Oh, no, I'm on talk. Oh, I would have loved to, Simon, but I'm busy. There we go. Simon Calder, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. That's Simon Calder, travel correspondent for The Independent, bringing up today on all that travel news. So, seriously, do think ahead. All sorts of information coming from us. And by all means, if you are stuck somewhere or want to let us know, feel free to get involved in that conversation. Meanwhile, next we'll take some more of your calls on why is the UK's economy struggling. That's coming up on Talk.
I agree with Prince William, it can be done if the political will is there. I think we actually saw a little bit of that during COVID, during the Everybody In initiative. It shows that actually you can get everybody inside, you can get everybody housed. What the government would no doubt say back is that is very costly and short term because it's in hotels, it's in temporary accommodation. I agree. But that's also on you. We've had successive governments that haven't built enough housing, as we know. It's a nightmare to try and get anywhere on the ladder, particularly the social housing. We had, I think Margaret Thatcher's Right to Buy scheme was a good scheme.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It's just gone 7:15. It's me, James Max, with you till 7 o'clock here on Talk with your Drive Time show. Well, funny enough, I'll be back tomorrow from 4 o'clock, so I hope you're going to be joining me then as part of our lineup for the festive season. Meanwhile, in a second, we're going to talk about festive decluttering. Dan from Kent has been in touch and says, hello, James, I missed you. Well, I've missed you too. Early morning, Ken, Lennon, Kevin and Ian show. Well, I'm sure plenty of opportunity for anybody and everybody to... call in if you like. Another Andy Williams song says this one, The Impossible Dream. I think that's probably appropriate because I have been asking you, why is the UK's economy struggling? Let's speak to Mark, who's in Lincolnshire. Hello, Mark.
Hi there, James. You all right?
Yes, good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Yeah, it was actually to do with the Magdeburg attack.
Yes.
In Germany, if that's okay, James. This was based on something that actually, funny enough, Andy Williams really infuriated me earlier today when I heard him on a different station.
Well, he does get about that one.
Well, he does a bit. And he came out with something that was, a classic left-wing thing that I keep hearing, and I've heard a few times at least. And that is, what was it? You can't stop immigration based on what, this attack, on what's happened here. And I was just, what are you talking about? Of course, this is one of the exact reasons that you stop immigration. Because the problem is you don't know who it is that you're letting into the country, so therefore you cannot predict who the next immigrant, which next immigrant will be the one that will carry out an attack. What we do know for certain is there will be another one, because there always is. But
I suppose, yes, but I guess what his argument is, and he's not here to defend himself, his argument would be... it's a sledgehammer to crack a nut because most people who move around and emigrate or move around in different places, they're never going to perpetrate such an attack. So if you want to take that view on immigration, you can do. I mean, I actually think that it's more important to look at the underlying problems. I don't think you shouldn't be stopping immigration per se, but you should be having immigration that's controllable and manageable. This country has always had immigration to an extent, but it used to be in the tens of thousands, maybe even 100,000. That sort of number is probably absorbable in the scheme of things, but when you have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people net arriving in a year, that makes it extremely difficult for people to integrate into a nation, to have the right resources, and then, of course, who are you saying goodbye to when they leave? I just think that we have mismanaged immigration in this country for the last 20 years to such an extent that I don't think that it's that incident that should stop immigration. But there are so many things where we should be having a conversation and not afraid to discuss immigration. And if it's that causes that debate, well, sad as it might be, then maybe that's what you have to do. But I don't think that should be, the one thing in the sand, the one line in the sand. There are a lot of other things.
But the problem is, James, I agree with you to an extent from what you're saying there. The issue is, though, as you mentioned, as you went on there with the sheer numbers that have come in over the last, 5 to 10 years, where it's just steadily increased to ridiculous levels. At this point, we're in a situation in this country, at this point, where you have to stop immigration. You can't just say, I mean, I'm not even happy with Reform's position of net zero immigration, so you replace who leaves with those that come in.
Oh, you have to allow people to come in and go out for various different reasons, but you just have to be clear on why those reasons may be beneficial to the country. You are never ever going to have a situation where the number is zero. So, it's nonsensical. And because there are plenty of reasons as to why people might want to leave and why people might want to come. I mean, you don't want to stop people coming to study. You don't want to stop people coming to invest or bring their money, do you?
I think you can have a conversation about that, to be quite honest.
I think the devastating impact that would have on our education establishments and on our economy would be so awful, Mark.
If you're talking, about, in fact, people that are coming in with money and, they're going to make an absolute positive impact to the country, then yes, to an argument, to a point, you can say yes, there's a point in doing that. But as far as people studying, the numbers that are coming in to study should be far lower than they are.
They possibly should be, but I think that requires a whole conversation about, how our educational system is funded and how you want to make sure that people who are Indigenous also get that sort of receive that education. Mark, I'm sure we could talk some more. So, funnily enough, I'll be back with more. The next few days, so you'll perhaps be able to call back. I'd be delighted to speak again. Meanwhile, we need to find out how to deal with what can only be described as decluttering, because apparently organisation is needed at Christmas. Sean Peleshi is president of Sorted, joins me now. Sean, very good evening to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So basically, are you telling me that we've just got too much stuff and we need to throw it away? Because as far as I'm concerned, you can never have too much stuff, and I like a bit of tut.
Well, if you like tut, if that's what you want to call it, then by all means have some tut. I think it's really important to understand what we've got in our homes and what we want in our homes and what we need in our homes. And certainly in the lead up to Christmas, there is this panic of we've got to give gifts, we've got to be able to give something to be able to celebrate the festive season. Right?
Oh, don't tell me that you basically get your old tut, wrap it up and give it to somebody else.
Well, do you know what? There's nothing wrong with regifting gifts. If there's something that's been given to you and it doesn't hold any purpose for you, it's still hold purpose for somebody else. There's no reason why you can't regift it. And once
make sure that it's chocolate, make sure they're not out of date.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. All things you need to be more mindful of the best before and when they can be used.
Doubt. Okay, so what sort of tut are we talking about? I mean, are we talking about dinner services that you've had and for sentimental value you've still got them and they're stuck in the cupboard and you never use them? My other half would love to clear a whole load of my tut away, and I've so far managed to refuse. But I do understand that I've got quite a few things that they disagree with and disapprove of.
I think really, when it comes to your belongings, if there's things like, your best serving set of crockery that you've been hanging on to because it was passed down the lines and, you only use it for best, there's no reason why you can't bring that out throughout the whole year and make the most of it. It's about making the most of what we've got, right? Not just about having it sat in a cupboard somewhere for 9/10 of the year.
That's true. So is the method here that you need to go through basically your house or your flat and every cupboard and take it out and say, do I use it, don't I use it? If I might use it, then use it more. And if you're not going to use it, get rid.
I think you've summed that up pretty well, actually. Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah, funny enough, that's what the other half said to me. That's what we were going to do. And I filled with horror because I've spent the last 54 years of my life gathering and collecting stuff. And I've got cupboards and lofts and all sorts of things. But then, what do you do with stuff that's been given to you by a relative or something and it's kind of got sentimental value, but you're never going to use it? Would you say get rid?
I think you have to acknowledge it and decide if it's something that if you're not going to use but you do still enjoy, looking at it and having it, then you get it out. You have it on show. You have it available.
Would you suggest, though, eBaying it yourself? Would you go to a company that does the eBaying for you? Do you give it away? Do you give it to charity shops that allow something that's hugely valuable to be sold for 25p? What do you do?
I think you have to be mindful of what works for you in terms of your own stress levels and what you can cope with. If you've got the time to be able to take photos and be able to post it and sell it, then absolutely, by all means, and you want to earn something back from it, then do that. If you don't, and you're stressed over the fact that, you know, the thought of just doing that, then let it go, either by way of going to a charity shop and letting them sell it and get some good from it, or by giving it to friends perhaps, or even by finding an external company that could perhaps sell it for you.
Right, so there's all of that. What are the sort of big things that, I mean, is there stuff like Tut or whatever that's like really popular at the moment that you should be looking out for? Because I guess, you know, we all go through phases. I mean, I'm sure I've got a box somewhere in the loft which has got a whole load of 1980s, you know, games and Rubik's Cubes and all sorts of nonsense that I had years ago. I mean, is that valuable Tut that I should be looking at?
Some of it may well be. If it's an original, you know, item, an original toy that was used, well, even back in the 80s, you know, that these items are popular now. So have a look online, see what people are selling, see what people are paying for things, and decide for yourself if it's something that you actually want to make some money from, or if it's something that you just don't need anymore and you'd like to pass on to somebody else to have.
So, presumably, if we receive gifts over the next few days, which we might do, of things that we don't want, so re-gifting, you know, cautiously, because sometimes people say, oh, what, you know, did you like this or did you like that? I'm assuming there are some things that you might have to keep at least for a little while, but there is, I mean, if you receive something and you're never going to see that person again and you really dislike it, re-gift it, just get it out. But then, can you, I would say my mantra for giving presents is give something that you would like to receive yourself. So yeah, if you're re-gifting something, then by very nature you don't like it.
Well, I suppose again then it's just about, you know, the item itself. Is it really worth re-gifting, or is it worth just letting it go to a charity where they can gift it to somebody? But it's about the value of it, isn't it? And what does it mean to you? If it's something that that somebody has perhaps made for you, specifically for you, then maybe you do need to think about holding on to it for a little bit longer and just thinking, you know, what do I want to do with this? If it's an item perhaps that is readily available for other people to be able to use, but you just don't need it, then there's no reason why you can't let it go. You can be thankful for receiving it. There's nothing wrong with saying thank you very much and appreciating the thought that's gone into it. But actually, if it's not holding any value to you, then there's no point in having it in your house just, you know, cluttering up some space that could be valuable for something else.
Well, I guess we're just going to have to do a certain amount of decluttering, and there's no getting away from it. Sian, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening here on Talk. That's Sian Palesci, president of Sorted. Basically, clear out your old Tut. Get rid. Just get rid. Anyway, it's almost it from me for today's Drive Time show. However, coming up at 7 o'clock, it's Russell Quirk, and he's here now. Very good evening.
Good evening. How was your show?
Yeah, well, I don't know. You'll be the judge of that.
Well, I
can't mark my own homework.
Well, I don't know. Some of us do. Sounded okay to me. I'm going to be copying.
Okay. Well, hang on a second. You just told me to big up myself, and then you're saying it's okay.
Well, it sounded okay. Well, I can't give you too much glory, can I?
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Do you want to know what I'm going to be talking about?
No. No, of course I do.
Oh, come on, play the game. So, top 5 Christmas movies, James. I've decided the top 4.
Yes.
And I'm going to allow the viewers to tell us which is the 5th best Christmas
Home
movie.
Alone, obviously.
Might be one of them.
Yeah.
Might be 2 of them, actually.
Yeah, there are a lot of Christmas movies. I mean, my next-door neighbour is obsessed by Sound of Music. And
really?
Yeah,
it's
loves
really
it.
A Christmas movie, though, isn't it?
Yeah, no, well, it was because it was always on, you see.
But you see,
I would go Wallace and Gromit and Home Alone.
OK, you should ring in a minute and become part of the poll. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. See, I love that film at Christmas, but I don't think it's a Christmas film. Wizard of Oz, not really a Christmas film.
No.
I think it's got to have a feel-good and a snowy thing going on, hasn't it? But anyway, National Service, how do you feel about that? To try and whip our young whippersnappers that transgress into shape. A certain
too little, too late.
Certain SAS veteran thinks that we should impose it to right the wrongs of our feral youth.
OK, interesting.
Talking about that. And the Church of England censoring carols. You think they'd have other things better to do, like maybe censoring paedophiles. But
alternatively, yes, getting rid of their most senior Archbishop there.
Yes, well, several of them, actually.
Yes.